Chapter 651, Guilt-Ridden Tai by Yunsheng. The stagnation of his cultivation was only the main drawback. Other than that, there were many other smaller drawbacks. One of them was the fact that he had no sense of pain. His cognition slowing down was another problem. In this world, Wisdom Path had already deciphered the mysteries behind how a person thinks. When a person thinks, many thoughts would be created in their minds. Intelligent people would generate a large number of thoughts more quickly, while stupid people would generate fewer thoughts, and at a slower pace. When these individual thoughts collide into one another, they would fuse or possibly be destroyed. Eventually, one or more new thoughts would be created. These new thoughts would be the result of their thinking. The brain is the place which gives birth to thoughts. It is an important domain for all life forms when they think. But this domain is decided on two aspects. One was the body, while the other was the soul. If a person's soul resided in a wild beast's body, then this wild beast would become very intelligent. This level of intelligence would far surpass an ordinary wild beast, but would be lower than a normal human being. Gu is the essence of heaven and earth. Man is the spirit of all beings. Among all living beings, humans were the most intelligent. To achieve this, one needed a human's physical body and a human soul. Now that Fang Yuan's body was completely dead, only his soul was intact. Thus, in his mind, the number of thoughts generated would be much fewer, and the speed of his cognition would reduce greatly. Intensive thinking would lead to a sharp fall in the number of thoughts. Because the zombie's mind produces fewer thoughts, and at a slower pace, the thoughts generated cannot keep up with the expenditure of thoughts. If Fang Yuan was a brute, so be it. But he was very skilled at scheming. He was an ambitious person who was used to plotting in order to succeed in situations. After becoming a zombie, he felt very uncomfortable. He was not used to this new change at all. No wonder most zombies like First Gen Guyu choose to enter deep sleep. When one is sleeping, they would think less, and the consumption of their thoughts would fall sharply, thus they would be able to accumulate more thoughts in their mind. When they battle, they would think intensely and use up these thoughts. Fang Yuan had a new understanding in his mind. This was the same reason as that of Giant Sun's Will, who chose to enter deep sleep. The less I think, the more dull and slow I would become. To think that one day, I, Fang Yuan, would turn into an idiot. He. Fang Yuan mocked himself in his mind, collecting his scattered thoughts. Next, he turned to Little Hu Immortal. Bring my senior brother, Tai Bai Yunsheng, in here, I want to meet him. Little Hu Immortal replied to him obediently, immediately vanishing from the spot. She was the land spirit. She could freely teleport anywhere within Hu Immortal blessed land. After 10 breaths of time, Little Hu Immortal reappeared, this time bringing Tai Bai Yunsheng with her. Junior brother, you, sigh. What shall we do now? Taking a look at Fang Yuan, Tai Bai Yunsheng was stunned, his eyes turned red as he spoke in a choking voice. He already was aware of the fact regarding Fang Yuan turning into a 6-armed heavenly zombie king completely. This was something Fang Yuan had specified to Little Hu Immortal earlier, as something that could be exposed to Tai Bai Yunsheng. Fang Yuan laughed heartily. Originally, I had advanced into a strength path Gu Immortal. What a pity that I have ended up in this state. There is no choice, I will have to continue calling you senior brother. Come. Senior brother, this is a crude place, please find a block of stone and take a seat. The cave that Fang Yuan was in now was dug out from the center of Dang Hun Mountain back in the day by Fairy Bai Hu. It was the place where she had built Dang Hun Palace. After Dang Hun Mountain was destroyed by the Gruel Mud Immortal Gu, Fang Yuan had returned it to normal with Tai Bai Yunsheng. The restored Dang Hun Mountain retained this mountain cave. But the golden bricks, the silver tiles, the pink curtains, the large round bed, the golden silk blankets, and the fragrant wind chimes that were in Dang Hun Palace were nowhere to be found. Rank 6 Immortal Gu landscape as before, it could restore any mountain or body of water back to a state in the past. The furniture inside Dang Hun Palace did not count as being part of a mountain or body of water. Of course, Fong Yuan did not want to restore the former Dang Hun Palace either. After all, Fairy Bai Hu's bedroom was way too pink, it was filled with a feminine aura and did not suit Fong Yuan. There was no furniture in the mountain cave, it was really crude and simple. Tai Bai Yunsheng chose the boulder closest to Fong Yuan and sat down. Right now, his inner thoughts were filled with concern, gratitude, and unconditional trust towards Fong Yuan. After all, the two of them had braved dangers and near-death experiences together, they had gone through a lot in Northern Plains, and had witnessed the sincerity and feelings in each other's hearts. Not to mention the 2 times Fong Yuan had helped Tai Bai Yunxing in the True Inheritance secluded domain, he did not hesitate at all, not even batting an eyelid. The first time, it was to retrieve landscape as before Immortal Gu, while the second time, he gave up on man as before Immortal Gu in order to save Tai Bai Yunxing's life. During that moment, Tai Bai Yunxing was so touched his tears nearly flowed down his cheeks. He had a Gu immortal inheritance, he naturally knew the immense attraction an Immortal Gu had towards a Gu immortal. Fong Yuan gave up on the Immortal Gu in order to save him, Tai Bai Yunxing, this completely displayed Fong Yuan's true feelings. After that, Tai Bai Yunxing was captured by He Lulan. Fong Yuan immediately changed his direction, taking back man as before Gu first. Tai Bai Yunxing was in complete agreement with his actions and his heart settled, this was truly a rational decision. When he woke up, he found that he was inside Hu immortal blessed land, and was out of danger. Tai Bai Yunxing was jubilant, being able to luckily maintain his life was naturally a very joyous matter. But what made him even happier was that afterwards, seeing that he had woken up, little Hu immortal returned landscape as before and man as before, these 2 immortal Gu back to him. Tai Bai Yunxing had a soft and kind nature, he had deep attachment towards these 2 immortal Gu. Regaining his important treasures after losing them, he was truly overjoyed. But when he heard about Fong Yuan's situation from little Hu immortal, his heart shuddered, all of his joy was swept away, his inner thoughts was filled with sadness, guilt, regret, and pity. Thus, he had repeatedly tried to meet Fong Yuan, attempting to give it his all to save this junior brother. At this moment, he sat on the stone boulder, he had an expression of grief as he sighed deeply, I am ashamed, not only did junior brother save this life of mine, I even have to bear your consolation in kind words after meeting you. Fong Yuan stretched out one arm, patting Tai Bai Yunxing's shoulders, using his hoarse voice as he laughed, destiny is unpredictable, most things in life do not go your way. As a person, we should be more open-minded. Although I became a zombie, it is still halfway between life and death, compared to those dead people and giant sun's will, we are much better. Especially when at the final moment, I even obtained wisdom Gu. This is a huge profit, senior brother does not need to blame yourself, you should be happy. When Fong Yuan was leaving, he opened the stargate. Wisdom Gu knew that this was a tunnel to the outside world, its survival instincts urged it to fly towards Fong Yuan on its own initiative. This was something Fong Yuan had expected. Stargate Gu was immortal Gu, it could not contain the aura of an immortal Gu. Fong Yuan gritted his teeth as he forcefully placed Wisdom Gu in his immortal aperture. Even though Wisdom Gu restrained its own aura and Fong Yuan's immortal aperture was a dead land, having much greater capability to support it, Fong Yuan was barely able to handle it during the short period of time needed to pass through the Stargate. The moment he returned to Hu immortal blessed land, he quickly let Wisdom Gu out. Hu immortal blessed land was a rank 6 immortal aperture, but it was situated on Tian Ti mountain, it took in the earth chi of central continent and was very stable. It was not comparable with an immortal aperture that was still in a Gu immortal's body. Regarding Wisdom Gu, Tai Bai Yunsheng was aware of the matter. An outstanding person will do outstanding things. Junior brother's abilities have truly made me feel nothing but deep admiration. But even the legendary rank 9 immortal Gu would not be able to treat junior brother's zombie body. Why don't you let me try and use man as before Gu? Tai Bai Yunsheng was very emotional. At this point, he had already stood up, ready to give it a try. But Fong Yuan stopped him. Senior brother, you know clearly deep within your mind that this man as before immortal Gu can only return a person to a prior state within one moment in the past. Although it can revive a person, such a long time has already gone by. I do not know what countless number of moments have passed since then. How can it possible heal me? It will be in vain even if you try. Why should you waste your precious green grape immortal essence? Tai Bai Yunsheng's expression was ashen, his emotions were unstable. When Fong Yuan had finished his words, he suddenly stretched out his palms, slapping harshly on his own face. Crack crack crack. 5 to 6 sharp sounds were heard. Tai Bai Yunsheng was actually slapping himself. Senior brother, stop it. What are you doing this for? Fong Yuan acted like he was caught off guard. He hurriedly stood up, stretching out 2 arms and grabbing Tai Bai Yunsheng's hands. Tai Bai Yunsheng could not compete with Fong Yuan's strength at all. After being immobilized, he cried profusely, "Junior brother, I have let you down, I am really very sorry." As he cried, his knees bent as he actually attempted to kneel down. Fong Yuan quickly grabbed him, asking in shock, "Senior brother, what are you doing?" "Junior brother, if back then, I had lent man as before immortal Gu to you, you would have been able to use it at the crucial moment and would not have turned into this current form," Tai Bai Yunsheng said with a tear-stricken face. He was a very kind person, although he had indirectly caused the death of Gao Yang and Zhu Zai in the past. That was just a person's instincts to survive. To him, Fong Yuan was the savior of his life, a benefactor. He was also his junior brother. They had the same master, but this person who was his benefactor and junior brother, was harmed because of his own negligence. If back then, Tai Bai Yunsheng had taken the initiative to lend his Gu worm to Fong Yuan would not have ended up in such an awkward state. After Tai Bai Yunsheng woke up, this thought had been lurking in his mind. It caused him to feel great grief and regret. He was in deep agony. At this moment, Tai Bai Yunsheng was weakly falling towards the ground. He was in agony and regret. He was only supported by Fong Yuan's 2 arms. Fong Yuan was 6 meters tall. He looked down at the crying Tai Bai Yunsheng from above as a trace of eeriness flashed across his eyes. "I am very glad that you have such thoughts." He laughed in his mind, but with his mouth he sounded very sincere as he said, "Senior brother, you do not need to be like this. Although a zombie's body is very hard to revert, there exist many ways and methods that are available for me. And don't forget that we have Wisdom Gu here." Tai Bai Yunsheng slowly shook his head. He spoke weakly, Wisdom Gu is as high as rank 9, it came here with you all because of its survival instincts. Junior brother, even if you are a rank 6 Gu immortal, you are unable to refine it, and there is no way you can control it. Of course I understand this. But even like this, just a bit of the light of wisdom is able to give me great rewards. In fact, my current zombie body has no lifespan, it is even more suitable for getting close to Wisdom Gu. Fong Yuan stretched out his 3rd arm, patting Tai Bai Yunsheng's back lightly as he explained amicably. "And what's more, I still have Mo Yao's will." Mo Yao? Tai Bai Yunsheng was confused. This was an additional gain of mine in 88 True Yang building. Mo Yao was once a refinement path grandmaster, a certain generation's fairy of Central Continent's Spirit Affinity House. Tai Bai Yunsheng was a born and bred man of Northern Plains. He had never heard of Mo Yao's name, but as Spirit Affinity House was one of the famous top 10 sects of Central Continent, he had heard of it before. A certain generation's fairy of Spirit Affinity House, as well as a refinement path grandmaster. It seems that this Mo Yao is not simple. Tai Bai Yunsheng's gloomy expression eased. Fang Yuan laughed again, saying, and most importantly, senior brother, don't forget that we still have Master. I am sure that Master has a solution for this. I will not hide this from you. After Master handed me the mission for 88 Truyang building, he only left me a single consumable Gu, with the specific use of reporting the details to him. I had already used this Gu 2 days ago, when I first returned to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Fang Yuan had searched Tai Bai Yunsheng's soul earlier in 88 Truyang building, and learnt about his life experiences as well as secrets. Tai Bai Yunsheng had once met a mysterious beggar, and obtained a time path Gu immortal inheritance from him. Thus, Fang Yuan lied and swindled, using his eloquent tongue and world-class acting skills to convince Tai Bai Yunsheng in 88 Truyang building, making him believe that both of them have the same master, which is that old beggar. Fang Yuan even gave that old beggar a random title of Purple Mountain True Monarch. Tai Bai Yunsheng believed this lie from Fang Yuan completely. Now that Fang Yuan mentioned this, Tai Bai Yunsheng's eyes were shining, so junior brother has a method to contact Master. This is truly fantastic. Others might not have a way, but Master is such a knowledgeable person, I am sure he has a method. The fires of hope were burning in his heart. From his tone, one could tell that the old beggar held a very important position within his inner thoughts. Tai Bai Yunsheng was filled with confidence towards this old beggar. If at this moment, he knew the truth, who knows what expression he would show. Fang Yuan showed no flaws, replying calmly, senior brother, don't be hasty, I believe that Master's letter is going to come in a few days, we should wait patiently. Tai Bai Yunsheng nodded. After Fang Yuan used the name of Purple Mountain True Monarch, his mood had finally calmed down. He stood up straight, as Fang Yuan let go of his arms. Tai Bai Yunsheng took a step back, his gaze was locked with Fang Yuan's bright red eyes. He raised his palm and placed it by his chest, saying with a very solemn expression, junior brother, I will engrave your kindness deep into my heart, I will never forget it. I swear to longevity heaven, even if Master has no way to cure you, I, Tai Bai Yunsheng, will spend my entire life looking for a way to revive you, junior brother. Ha ha ha. Longevity heaven is Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's grotto heaven, we have just wrecked this old fellow's Truyang building, now you are swearing in its name, this is simply too ironic. Fang Yuan raised his head and laughed, senior brother, I will be frank with you. We are all Master's pupils, and I have saved your life before. A droplet received in need will be repaid with an entire spring, next, I will need you to repay me fully. Tell me. Tai Bai Yunsheng immediately responded without hesitation. He had long since decided to repay this debt, even if Fang Yuan wanted him to do the impossible, he would have no objections. During these days after he woke up, he had felt extremely guilty. His conscience was taking a beating, and only by making a sacrifice for Fang Yuan would his heart feel slightly better. Thus, Fang Yuan also became solemn, this matter, I have been thinking about it for a long time. That is our seniority issue. I am Master's legacy disciple, but because you became an immortal, you caught up to me. I am unsatisfied with this. I was originally a strength path Gu immortal, even though I turned into a zombie, but sooner or later, there will be a day when I revert back. Thus, according to seniority, I am the senior brother, you are the junior brother. What? Tai Bai Yunsheng stared with his eyes wide open. He had never expected that the great debt Fang Yuan was requesting him to pay back was for such a tiny matter. A touched feeling welled up in his heart. Fang Yuan was someone who did not want to take advantage of his favor, but was he, Tai Bai Yunsheng, someone who did not know how to repay favors? Tai Bai Yunsheng thought in his mind, he sighed and stretched out his palm, patting Fang Yuan's leg, which was tough like a mountain rock. His sharp and rough leg hair even caused pain to Tai Bai Yunsheng's palm. Fang Yuan was like a giant, about 6 meters tall. Tai Bai Yunsheng could only pat his leg with that height. He was solemn. Before raising his head, looking at Fang Yuan's face, he laughed teasingly. "Oh junior brother, that is wishful thinking. How can a thing like seniority be so easily changed? Unless master personally rearranges our positions, I will definitely still be your senior brother, ha ha ha." Tai Bai Yunsheng was a man not lacking in pride. How could he repay this huge favor so easily? "Hey!" Fang Yuan shouted, venting his unhappiness. "Old Bai, why are you such a petty person? Could it be that you forgot what I said earlier? I will definitely not call you senior brother." "Ha ha ha, junior brother, I can completely understand you, this senior brother does not mind." Tai Bai Yunsheng laughed and laughed, he was so touched his tears were overflowing. How many years had passed in which he had not laughed so joyfully? He had finally found his organization. Although he had not known Fang Yuan for long, he felt very close to him, it was as if they were family. His laughter was echoing in the mountain cave, with the pink crystal mountain walls also looking very heartwarming at this moment. Chapter 652, Seeing Wisdom Gu Again. There was only Fang Yuan left in the cave. Tai Bai Yunsheng had already left. He sat on the stone bench, his 8 monstrous arms were hanging down, some were behind his back, some were crossed, together with his huge body. Just by sitting, he gave off a mountainous aura, it gave people fear. As for the way to deal with Tai Bai Yunsheng, Fang Yuan had considered it deeply. Fang Yuan only trusted himself, he would never truly trust others. If he killed Tai Bai Yunsheng, he would obtain man as before Gu and landscape as before Gu, as well as his rank 6-time path immortal aperture. But this was not maximizing his benefits. He could not deny the fact that Tai Bai Yunsheng was a very useful chess piece. This useful was in 2 aspects. Firstly, he was worth using. Before he became an immortal, he was a famous healing Gu master in Northern Plains. Now that he was a rank 6-time path Gu immortal with a high-grade blessed land, and don't forget, he was even a flying master, he had great value if exploited. The second aspect was that he was easy to control. Fang Yuan had once searched his soul, thus he knew about Tai Bai Yunsheng's life experience clearly. Tai Bai Yunsheng was a kind-hearted man, he was conscientious and knew how to repay favors. He was indebted to Fang Yuan, because he had been helped several times in Truyang building, especially during the final moment when he was rescued from the wind veil of assimilation, and even had his 2 immortal Gu returned to him. Tai Bai Yunsheng had placed his complete trust in Fang Yuan now. This point could be seen when Tai Bai Yunsheng chose his seat earlier. There were many boulders in the cave. Fang Yuan had such an ugly appearance and was so huge, normal people who got close to Fang Yuan would feel great pressure and would subconsciously keep a distance from him. But Tai Bai Yunsheng purposely chose a seat that was closest to Fang Yuan. This meant that in his heart, Fang Yuan was one of the closest people to him, he was not afraid that Fang Yuan would cause any harm to him. Tai Bai Yunsheng had once harmed Gao Yang and Zhu Zai, this was the most important point. His survival instincts took over his reasoning, this was something very natural. After that incident, Tai Bai Yunsheng was filled with guilt and could not forget it. His appearance was haggard and he was mentally tortured. After Fang Yuan's entrapment, he had almost gone crazy and rushed his immortal ascension, his original intention was to die. Attempting suicide because of his guilt, one could see how powerful his conscience was. By coincidence, Tai Bai Yunsheng received the help of Giant Sun's will and successfully became a Gu immortal, before falling unconscious. Fang Yuan used the glass owner token, entering the round of 88 Truyang building he was placed in and woke him up. At this crucial moment, he told Tai Bai Yunsheng about the secret of their master. This precisely hit a weak point within Tai Bai Yunsheng's mental state. Tai Bai Yunsheng denied his own self, thus he was in great agony and was very lost. But at this moment, Fang Yuan appeared, giving him a group of apprentices and an organization to provide him a sense of belonging. It gave him a feeling of protection and warmth. Next, Fang Yuan entered and exited his time path immortal aperture, casually asking him to take care of his immortal Gu. This gave him the initial confidence. In addition, during their encounters and difficulties in True Yang building, all that had happened gave Tai Bai Yunsheng a good reason to fully trust Fang Yuan. In a way, he had to thank Mo Yao for interfering with his own mind, otherwise, how could he have obtained Tai Bai Yunsheng's unconditional trust? Tai Bai Yunsheng caused the death of Gao Yang and Zhu Zai. This greatly violated his values and beliefs. He harbored extreme guilt. He felt that he was not such a person, yet he committed such an act. Now that I am his benefactor, he is indebted to me, he will definitely repay me 100-fold or even 1,000-fold. This is not only because he knows to repay favors, but also because this is a chance for him to prove that he is a good person. Fang Yuan calmly analyzed. Bad people would not repay favors, in fact, they would even return the favor with ill intentions. In the future, the more Tai Bai Yunsheng sacrifices for Fang Yuan, the more it would prove that he is a good person. That way, this can cancel out the guilt he felt towards Gao Yang and Zhu Zai. This touched upon the psychological studies from Earth, including the balance theory in compensation mentality. In a way, Fang Yuan gave Tai Bai Yunsheng a chance to prove himself once more, and a reason for him to continue living. Fang Yuan knew this clearly, thus when he saved Tai Bai Yunsheng, he even returned man as before and landscape as before, these two immortal Gu. I have way too many immortal Gu, it is very costly to feed them. At this point, leaving man as before and landscape as before to Tai Bai Yunsheng is undoubtedly better. At the same time, my immortal aperture is dead, it cannot produce immortal essence. I only have 19 beads of green grape immortal essence, the more I use them, the fewer I have left. Although I can use some of Bai Hu's immortal essence, isn't it best if I can make use of Tai Bai Yunsheng's green grape immortal essence instead? Thinking of the cost of feeding immortal Gu, Fang Yuan felt a headache. Raising a Gu worm was like supporting a mistress. Gu masters are often unable to afford it or maintain their upkeep. Ever since Fang Yuan had Hu immortal blessed land, he had no problems feeding mortal Gu. But now that he had so many immortal Gu, not even Hu immortal blessed land could afford such high costs. This was a blissful worry. Many Gu immortals did not have a single immortal Gu, they were still looking for one. In Fang Yuan's previous life, he also struggled to refine one, spring-autumn cicada. After he finally succeeded after numerous difficulties, he was forced to self-detonate. Right now, Fang Yuan was racking his brain, trying to think of how to feed so many immortal Gu. Fang Yuan sat silently, attempting to find some inspiration from his previous life's memories. After trying for a while, he gave up. Sigh, after becoming a zombie, my cognition has truly slowed down. Earlier when speaking to Tai Bai Yunsheng, I could feel my thoughts moving slowly. Right now, my thinking speed cannot keep up with my original pace. He summoned the land spirit, Little Hu Immortal. How is Wisdom Gu? Where is it now? Little Hu Immortal was the Blessed Land's land spirit, she could understand everything that was happening in the Blessed Land. Master, Wisdom Gu had gone deep underground since it was brought here by you. It found a rockman cave and is currently slumbering inside. Little Hu Immortal closed her eyes. After sensing for a while, she opened her giant watery eyes and said this. Fang Yuan nodded, ordering, bring me there. The cave that Wisdom Gu was in was rather big. After Fang Yuan was brought over by Little Hu Immortal, he could still move about freely. Sensing that Fang Yuan had arrived, Wisdom Gu shone with a 5-colored light. Little Hu Immortal sat on Fang Yuan's shoulder, staring at Wisdom Gu curiously. This was the rank 9 Wisdom Gu. Although Little Hu Immortal could sense everything in the Blessed Land, but such a close-range encounter was still very rare. Oh Wisdom Gu, I helped you to escape and saved your life. According to our earlier agreement, it is time for you to hold your end of the deal. In the dark and gray cave, Fang Yuan's voice echoed. Wisdom Gu was silent. After a few breaths' time, it floated up into the air. At the same time, it summoned the light of wisdom. So beautiful. Little Hu Immortal stared with shining eyes, laughing joyfully. The sphere-shaped light of wisdom was shining in many colors. It engulfed Fang Yuan and Little Hu Immortal. Fang Yuan could instantly feel many of his thoughts colliding. He could think at lightning speed. This was the result of an accelerated cognition speed. This feeling, this is so comforting. Little Hu Immortal slowly opened her eyes wide and stared dazedly. She was immersed in the wonderful feeling of being in the light of wisdom. But after a few breaths' time, her body started fading. Little Hu Immortal, you were formed from obsession. Although fused with the heavenly power, you are still restricted by the wisdom Gu. You cannot stay here for long, quickly go back. Fang Yuan stretched out a finger, pointing at Little Hu Immortal's head, waking her up. Little Hu Immortal hugged her head, her white cheeks turned red with excitement. Master, Master, I can't believe I could become so smart. Wisdom Gu is amazing. She shouted, like a child who had found new toys. She was overjoyed. Master is most amazing, you could even get Wisdom Gu. Just let me stay here a bit longer, is that okay? She started bootlicking Fang Yuan. No. Chapters will be fully updated at nov.l/bin.com. Fang Yuan laughed heartily. It seems that Wisdom Gu had made you think more, quickly get out. Saying so, his two fingers pressed on Little Hu Immortal's head. Little Hu Immortal's cute, tiny head was squeezed by Fang Yuan's finger, as he pressed again and again. Little Hu Immortal pouted slightly as she shook her head. Master, I am going to leave. She did not dare to disobey Fang Yuan's words. She vanished with a flash. The cave was quiet again. Fang Yuan did not sit down. Since the zombie's body was extremely hard and tough, there was no difference in feeling between sitting or standing. He stood in the halo. The first thing he did was to inspect Mo Yao's will, which was suppressed in his immortal aperture. Mo Yao's will was unaffected by the light of wisdom. Even though he had confirmed this earlier in the wind veil of assimilation, Fang Yuan's heart was finally at ease after confirming it once again. Once the immortal aperture is formed, it is a small world. The walls of the immortal aperture are the walls of heaven and earth. It isolates the inside and outside. There is almost no outside force that can influence the small world inside. Fang Yuan shut his bright red eyes as he started to think and ponder. He had become a zombie. The production of thoughts in his mind had become much slower, and his cognition had also slowed. But the light of wisdom could cause his thoughts to collide at an increased speed. As they collided, he would expend a lot of thoughts in a short period of time. If he was another ordinary zombie basking in this light, although he would turn smarter for a moment, he would become an idiot immediately afterwards. But there were wills in Fang Yuan's mind. These wills were all formed from wisdom path Gu worms. They could think. Earlier, in order to deal with Mo Yao, Fang Yuan had delved into wisdom path and bought many different Gu worms like special will Gu, deliberate will Gu, sharp intent Gu, and so on. These wills all helped him at the last moments of his journey in northern plains. Right now, Fang Yuan's brain could no longer keep up. He had to use these wills as replacements. His primeval essence was limitless, thus his wills were also near infinite. Under the light of wisdom, the originally stable wills all melted like snow in sunlight. They were shrinking. What followed after was the appearance of flashes of inspiration, and his old memories were becoming clearer. As long as Fang Yuan concentrated and recalled his memories, these huge amounts of memories would vividly play out again in his mind. At this moment, the world seemed brighter. Even before he had truly thought of the result, Fang Yuan already had many different ideas to resolve the problem. As long as he followed these methods, Fang Yuan was sure that he would be able to find the most suitable method to solve this problem. Chapter 653, Bankruptcy and Zombie Alliance. In the underground cave, Fang Yuan bathed in the light of wisdom and pondered deeply. Although I am reborn and have 500 years of experience from my past life, but in contrast to old monsters like Mo Yao and Giant Sun, I pale in comparison. My previous dominance in this aspect has already vanished. Throughout the flow of history, there were as many grand heroes as there were stars in the sky. In the history of humans, Giant Sun Immortal Venerable was an unrivaled expert that could seldom be produced even in 1,000,000 years. Fairy Mo Yao was a refinement path grandmaster, and back then was the fairy of Spirit Affinity House. She was a famous and influential person with shocking talent. In those days, she would be listed among the top 10 renowned Gu immortals in the large central continent. Fang Yuan had firm willpower and had gone through unique experiences, but he was also a single unremarkable star in this vast starry sky. With just his current strength and foundation, it was hard for him to be on par with the great experts that appeared in history. This trip to Northern Plains has far surpassed my original expectations. If not for the meddling of Mo Yao's will, I could have stayed in True Yang Building and explored gradually using a different identity every 10 years. But at this point, the die is cast and Northern Plains is bound to be in a great uproar. Countless experts and powerful forces will seek to find trouble with me. Fang Yuan summed up his experiences and sensed that the losses he suffered were due to his weakness in the aspect of wisdom path. His strong points were in calculating and scheming. And building upon his experience preserved from rebirth, his advantages were further amplified. However, Mo Yao's will was able to disturb his thoughts, which caused him to not be able to think properly. 88 True Yang Building is a spiritual symbol of Northern Plains, and I am the main culprit in causing it to be toppled. If I am captured now, the consequences will be unimaginable. Although I am able to hide in Hu Immortal Blessed Land right now, it is not actually safe. Not speaking of Immortal Crane sect, which has been eyeing Dang Hun Mountain since the beginning, perhaps Northern Plains Gu immortals could discover my origins and track me down through wisdom path deductions. Fang Yuan knew clearly that holing up within Hu Immortal Blessed Land seemed extremely safe, but was actually akin to waiting for death. Only by going on the offensive before these enemies ascertain the truth could he remedy this perilous situation. Dark Limit Immortal Gu, I have heard of it even in my previous life. It can indeed conceal aura and obstruct calculations. If I can get this Gu, I believe I can avert the dangerous situation. Fang Yuan thought of He Lulan. This woman was not of minor importance and was an outstanding, ruthless person. She was pragmatic and could flexibly take advantage of situations. She betrayed her ancestor for her own interests and wanted to kill her own father. These evidently displayed a demonic nature. She possessed great strength, true martial physique, and also obtained a strength path Immortal Gu. Once she advanced into a Gu immortal, her path would be one of rapid progress. One could say that she was similar to Fang Yuan, but precisely because of this, in cooperating with her, it demanded exceptional caution. Whether it was Immortal Gu Dark Limit or fixed immortal travel, they were both things he desired. Fang Yuan's thoughts started to slow down as he thought till this point. The wills in his mind were nearly expended. Fang Yuan was dazed for a moment, before retreating from the light of wisdom to activate Gu worms and create new wills. His mind was soon filled with many types of wills. It is a pity that mortal Gu cannot create too many wills, and they are easily consumed in the light of wisdom. If I can use an immortal Gu to create wills, their number would be enormous and could also be sustained for a long period of time, allowing me to think as much as I like. Fang Yuan felt some regret. He had a rank 6 wisdom path Immortal Gu, delight in water and mountain, which could create joyful will. However, Fang Yuan did not use it after slight consideration. Immortal Gu required immortal essence. He only had 19 beads of green grape immortal essence left, and because his immortal aperture had become a dead land, using one immortal essence bead would mean one fewer bead left without replenishment. He needed to save his immortal essence as much as possible to be prepared for the times when they are necessary. Thus, he opted to use mortal Gu for now. Fin the new. St. Uvels on n /velben.com. After accumulating a fixed amount of mortal wills, Fang Yuan stepped into the light of wisdom again. This time, he did not think about external situations, instead concentrating on himself. I have transformed into a zombie, my cultivation cannot progress an inch, how to resurrect and restore my human body is the first issue. It would be great if I could use Yin-Yang Rotation Gu, but I am an immortal zombie while Yin-Yang Rotation Gu only is at rank 4. The second issue is that I am already bankrupt. Fang Yuan had invested almost all of his savings in his trip to Northern Plains. His required expenses were now already greater than his earnings and he was now facing bankruptcy. He did not even have one immortal essence stone in his possession now, even who immortal blessed land had become extremely barren. Before the decisive battle in Northern Plains, Fang Yuan had already used up the remaining immortal essence stones. At the final juncture, he even had to exchange his goods to make purchases. He had already sold almost all the fox groups and wolf groups in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. In the large grassland in the Blessed Land, foxes and wolves could only be seen occasionally. Most of the nearly 10,000 hairy men Fang Yuan had bought in the past were also sold for emergency support. Now there were only around 2,000 old hairy men that were experienced in refining Gu left, which Fang Yuan was reluctant to sell off. The Rockmen slave transactions had been a strong economic pillar for Fang Yuan. But after Immortal Crane's sect stopped the transactions, this pillar crumbled down. The Rockmen trading market in Treasure Yellow Heaven had already been divided up completely and it would be hard for Fang Yuan to squeeze in. This caused the already bad situation to turn worse. There was no use in merely having powerful battle strength. There must be enough resources to support one's cultivation. The way of Gu involved nurturing, using and refining. Gu masters could not just use Gu, they had to raise and also refine Gu. Fang Yuan was now a zombie, his cultivation had stagnated, which further increased the resources he required. Only by doing so could he have a higher chance of restoring his life. 3 days later. Within Dang Hun Palace. Fang Yuan made simple arrangements once again, building a rough hall where stone chairs were arranged in 2 rows. The main chair was as spacious as a bed with its back as high as a monument, however when Fang Yuan sat on it, it fit him just right. Tai Bai Yunsheng was sitting on the first seat to Fang Yuan's left, his brows were furrowed as he held a small and exquisite white dove. This white dove was flickering with faint radiance, it was the rank 5 messenger dove Gu. Tai Bai Yunsheng's consciousness left the messenger dove Gu after few moments, he heaved a deep sigh and worriedly said, Master does not plan on helping and is making this a test for junior brother. Fang Yuan nodded, right. Master criticized me in the letter, saying I was greedy for small gains, not listening to his advice before I left and rashly opening Di Chio inheritance, which caused me to encounter Mo Yao's will and created a series of ill consequences. So this time, he wants me to resolve this issue by myself. Sigh, Master's style has always been like this, it seems I have no other option but to work hard. Tai Bai Yunxing nodded, approving of Fang Yuan's last sentence. Back then, the old beggar disappeared right after giving him the Gu immortal inheritance, not concerned with anything else. This style was the same as Fang Yuan's test, thus Tai Bai Yunxing did not sense anything weird. Tai Bai Yunxing asked in a quiet voice, Junior brother, you said Master had already taken in 6 legacy disciples. You are ranked 5th, grasping strength and enslavement path, with 2 Gu immortal inheritances. That means you have 5 other fellow disciples, how about we ask them for help? Fang Yuan shook his head. What a joke, of course it was not possible. This messenger dove Gu's contents were fabricated by Fang Yuan. Purple Mountain True Monarch's name was also casually made up by him. The 6 great legacy disciples were even more fictitious. How could one ask for help from those that did not exist? This is not possible. Fang Yuan gave a bitter smile, his gaze revealing extreme sincerity. First of all, I only have heard Master mentioning these fellow disciples once in a while. I have not personally seen them and also don't know what their identities are or where they are located. More importantly, this is a task assigned by Master. He has already approved of your status in the letter and has ranked you as the 5th disciple, and has said you have to help me for this period of time to solve this issue. At the same time, he allowed me to retain and use all the spoils of battle from Northern Plains. This is the help Master is giving me. If I still ask for help from the other disciples, it would not be what Master wishes for. After all, this is his test for me. Tai Bai Yunxing worriedly and anxiously said, even if Master did not say it, I would still remain by junior brother's side and use all my strength to help you. What are your plans now? Old Bai, you also read the contents in the letter. Master mentioned for me to join Zombie Alliance. What kind of organization is this Zombie Alliance? Tai Bai Yunxing asked. He had just recently advanced into a Gu Immortal, as such there were many things regarding Gu Immortals he did not know about. Zombie Alliance is just like what its name implies, it is an alliance of zombies. This alliance has existed since long ago, and reportedly it appeared in the medieval antiquity era, 300,000 years ago. Now, it is a super force which is spread throughout the 5 regions. Its main headquarters is in Eastern Sea, with a branch in each of the other 4 regions. Fang Yuan introduced. It actually extends throughout the 5 regions. Could they be even more powerful than Northern Plains Huang Jin family? Tai Bai Yunsheng was moved. Fang Yuan shook his head, that isn't the case. Almost all of Zombie Alliance's members compose of zombies, and their higher-ups are immortal zombies like me. For the most part, these immortal zombies are Gu Immortals who reached the end of their lifespan and had no choice but to turn into zombies to prolong their life. These Gu Immortals' immortal apertures are dead, they cannot produce immortal essence nor can they absorb heaven and earth chi, and after some time, their blessed land would start shrinking and parts of it would crumble. Thus, their battle strengths often can't compare to normal Gu Immortals. Naturally, certain immortal zombies are exceptions. Zombie Alliance's branches were weaker than the respective regions' super forces. But the headquarters at Eastern Sea was a level stronger than the native super forces. So it is like that. Tai Bai Yunsheng had grown in knowledge, he then asked with some doubt, then why does Master want junior brother to join Zombie Alliance? Fang Yuan thought for a moment before saying, if a Gu Immortal reached the end of their lifespan and transformed into an immortal zombie with no other choice left, then later on, if they obtain lifespan Gu, they are sure to want to resurrect. Originally, one of the purposes for Zombie Alliance's establishment was to help each other to research the method to regain a live physical body. So much time has gone by, they definitely have obtained some results. I think Master's purpose lies in this point. Tai Bai Yunsheng was happy and also worried, this suggestion is really good. But how will you join Zombie Alliance? Fang Yuan laughed, Old Bai, you don't need to worry. Joining Zombie Alliance is extremely simple, I only need to show my status as an immortal zombie. It's that simple. Of course. Zombie Alliance is suppressed by all the super forces, thus they operate with much difficulty, as such they are very eager to have more members in the alliance. At the same time, an immortal zombie's identity is not easy to disguise. Zombie Alliance has researched very deeply and has many methods to distinguish between immortal zombies. I intend to join Northern Plains Zombie Alliance, but before this, we have to wait for someone. Hey Lulan. Tai Bai Yunxing blurted out. Fang Yuan nodded. He did not hide his plans to go to Northern Plains from Tai Bai Yunsheng and had revealed almost everything, as he still needed to borrow the latter's strength in the future. Chapter 654, Asking Mo Yao's Will. Sigh, it has been so many years since I last saw a mirror willow. Mo Yao's will sighed. She touched the one and only mirror willow tree, speaking with deep emotions as she recalled the memories of her past. Fang Yuan's will was by her side. He silently watched and did not say a word to disrupt her. This world was rotting and dark. It was Fang Yuan's dead immortal aperture. Fang Yuan had tricked Mo Yao's will into entering his immortal aperture, suppressing her afterwards. Mo Yao was a refinement grandmaster. She was once a legendary Gu immortal. In the history of Central Continent, she had left behind her markings. Her will naturally had great value. Although Fang Yuan was harmed by Mo Yao's will and had gone through a near-death experience in Northern Plains, Fang Yuan did not hate Mo Yao's will. On the contrary, there was appreciation, even as much as admiration. If he was the one scheming, he might not have done any better than Mo Yao's will. He was prepared to interrogate Mo Yao's will, but it turned out that she was extremely cooperative. Towards the questions that Fang Yuan asked regarding refinement path, not only did she answer all of them, she even elaborated on the points and Fang Yuan gained huge insights from her words. But when Fang Yuan asked about the information of Spirit Affinity House, Mo Yao's will suddenly had a request. I have been away from Central Continent for so many years. Over these years, I have been missing the people and things over there more and more. Please find for me a tree of the mirror willow. It will alleviate my longingness for my homeland. Mirror willows were ordinary plants. They were about the size of ordinary willow trees, but their leaves were like pieces of mirrors. The leaves of these willows were the food of beggar moths. In the past, during the Rockmen transactions, Fang Yuan had purchased a batch of mirror willows from Immortal Crane's sect and had planted them in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Thus, he casually picked one of them and placed it into his immortal aperture. Back in the day, my main body and brother Bo Qing had first met each other under this mirror willow. The world moves on after a genius perishes. Mo Yao's will sighed. Immediately after, she turned around, looking at Fang Yuan's will. Thank you for acceding to my request. Since you want to know about Spirit Affinity House's matters, I will tell you about them. However, my information is extremely dated. You need to take note of this. Fang Yuan's will nodded. Mo Yao's will stood below the mirror willow, telling him much of Spirit Affinity House's inside information. Fang Yuan listened to her as he made comparisons to his 500 years of experience. His understanding of Spirit Affinity House greatly increased. Your immortal aperture is already dead. The mirror willow will be corroded by the death energy and turn into a dead tree in less than 3 days. What a pity. After giving him Spirit Affinity House's details, Mo Yao sighed again. But it unclear whether her pity was directed towards the mirror willow or Fang Yuan's immortal aperture. The next time you come here, can you bring a cup of Qingpu tea? This is Spirit Affinity House's specialty tea. It is not rare. Although I cannot taste it, I would like to see it. Mo Yao said. Fang Yuan's will snorted. It seems you have no awareness of your captive status. You are asking for this and that. Are you scheming something again? Mo Yao's will laugh charmingly. Oh Fang Yuan, you are too vigilant. Ever since my plan was exposed by you and was lured into the immortal aperture to be suppressed, I was already meat on the chopping block, subjected to your supervision at all times. You can do anything you want to me. How can I create any schemes and how would I be able to execute them? However, let's speak openly. Even though I failed completely and have no way of turning this around, if you try and be forceful, you will get a very incomplete result. After all, soul searching is easy, but will searching is tough. If you were a wisdom path grandmaster, that would be possible, but sadly you have nearly no foundation in wisdom path. All your Gu worms were bought randomly in the market. Wisdom path is different from other paths. It is mysterious and complex. You have not even reached the entry level yet. Mo Yao's will started criticizing Fang Yuan. She was not holding back at all. After all, she knew that Fang Yuan was very broad-minded. He was a rare and extraordinary demon. Indeed, at the next moment, Fang Yuan's will laughed. you are right, my wisdom path attainment is low, but thanks for your cooperation, from now on, you can live in my immortal aperture. I will bring the Qingpu tea next time." Saying so, his will flew into the sky. The immortal aperture opened a tiny slit, and this will flew all the way up into Fang Yuan's mind. In an instant, Fang Yuan learnt of all the information that this will had gotten from Mo Yao. Indeed, he lacked methods to proper search wills. Soul searching was easy, will searching was hard, this was normal. If that was not the case, when Wisdom Path Gu masters fight their enemies using wills, these would reveal their own secrets to their enemies when they are captured and taken. Precisely because will searching was hard, Wisdom Path Gu masters used them to fight enemies. As for Mo Yao, she is indeed quite a formidable person, no wonder she could leave her name in history. Fang Yuan praised her and sighed secretly. Mo Yao's will's plan was exposed, she had utterly failed. She could not even self-detonate, she was sealed in Fang Yuan's immortal aperture and was fully suppressed. But even in such a desperate situation, she did not give up. She cooperated with Fang Yuan, answering his questions for him, that was to display her value, and to fight for more time for herself. If one day, Fang Yuan encounters any danger and his immortal aperture shatters, or if he was captured by anyone, or died in the battlefield, Missouri Yao's will would have a chance to escape for freedom. Mo Yao's will did not give up, her persistent and unyielding attitude made Fang Yuan inwardly feel admiration towards her. Of course, if Fang Yuan had the proper methods and could search wills, he would strike at the first moment. But currently, Mo Yao's will was cooperating with him, this was better for his benefits. If I could really find a wisdom path inheritance, it would all be easier. Unfortunately, wisdom path is mysterious and deep, there are very few wisdom path Gu masters and Gu immortals in number. There are no wisdom path inheritances that I know of in my memories. Back then, Fang Yuan had collected some scattered wisdom path Gu worms in Treasure Yellow Heaven. He had mild progress in terms of wisdom path. But now that he was bankrupt, he had almost no purchasing power, he could not even continue this mild progress. As for the details of Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance, he did not ask. Because Mo Yao's will knew, Fang Yuan did not have any methods to deal with her yet. The two of them were smart people, they knew that asking forcefully was not possible. "Master, Immortal Crane Sect's reply is here." At this time, Little Hu Immortal appeared beside him, holding a rank 5-letter Gu. Immortal Crane Sect suddenly stopped the purchase of rock men, not long ago, Fang Yuan had sent them a letter to probe about this. Immortal Crane Sect's reply came very quickly. Fang Yuan took the letter Gu and his consciousness went into it. The content of the letter was written in a tough stance, they requested for Fang Yuan to initiate the trade of Guts Gu, otherwise, Immortal Crane Sect would announce that Fang Yuan was a traitor of the sect, and would mobilize the Gu immortals to attack Hu Immortal Blessed Land. A year ago, Fang Yuan had used fixed immortal travel and snatched Hu Immortal Blessed Land from under everyone's nose, it was like he was taking food from a tiger. Immortal Crane Sect immediately reacted, using the similar appearance of Fang Yuan and Fang Zheng to announce that Fang Yuan was actually a disciple that Immortal Crane Sect had nurtured in secret. The other 9 sects thus recognized Immortal Crane Sect's victory. Immortal Crane Sect's plan was to remove the other 9 competitors, then deal with Fang Yuan single-handedly, attempting to take Hu Immortal Blessed Land for themselves. Fang Yuan was happy to see this. After all, the difficulty of dealing with solely Immortal Crane Sect was completely different from dealing with the 10 great sects at the same time. But this way, Fang Yuan silently agreed with Immortal Crane Sect's lie, he was Immortal Crane Sect's disciple. Hu Immortal Blessed Land is situated on Tian Ti Mountain, even the 10 great sects cannot attack it casually, as it would provoke public anger within Central Continent. But if they announced that I was a traitor of the sect, they would have the perfect reason to attack. Fang Yuan's expression was solemn, thinking about the situation. He was not afraid, this was something that he had expected over a year ago. He only did not expect that immortal crane sex patience had worn thin so quickly. Fang Yuan laughed, saying to Little Hu Immortal, "Bring Tai Bai Yunxing here." Tai Bai Yunxing heard this news and his face turned gloomy. "What shall we do now?" Immortal Crane sect is one of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. It is a powerful force that surpasses Northern Plains super tribes. If they really attack, just the two of us cannot stop them. Fang Yuan laughed. "Old Bai, oh Old Bai, I asked you here to inquire about your opinion regarding this difficult question. But the moment you met me, you asked me a question instead." Tai Bai Yunxing gasped. He showed some embarrassment and shame as he frowned, thinking about it. Eventually, he had an idea. "Didn't we ally with He Lu Lan? We can ask her to help us." Evidently, He Lu Lan's great battle strength was ingrained into Tai Bai Yunxing's heart. Although He Lu Lan has the great strength true martial physique, even if she advance into a Gu immortal successfully, with just the three of us, we cannot stop Immortal Crane sect. Fang Yuan sighed and shook his head. "Then what shall we do? What shall we do?" Tai Bai Yunxing paced back and forth, thinking hard. Fang Yuan looked at him, laughing but not saying a word. Suddenly, Tai Bai Yunxing stopped in his tracks. He patted his head. "I've got it. Didn't Master ask you to join Zombie Alliance? We can totally join Zombie Alliance, and use Zombie Alliance's force to threaten Immortal Crane sect." But Fang Yuan shook his head, saying, "Zombie Alliance's structure is loose with little binding force, and Central Continent's Zombie Alliance branch is far inferior to Immortal Crane sect. It is not threatening in the least. Furthermore, if I try to make use of Zombie Alliance, I will have to give up some benefits. I'm afraid that instead of Immortal Crane sect, Zombie Alliance would be the first to benefit from this." "That won't work too, then what are we going to do?" Tai Bai Yunxing raised his head and looked at Fang Yuan with a bitter, frowning expression. But when he saw Fang Yuan smile at the corner of his lips, he was stunned, before reacting, pointing at Fang Yuan as he scolded laughingly, "What a junior brother you are, actually lying to this senior brother, watching my desperation. You look so confident, it is obvious you already have a plan." "Ha ha ha, Old Bai, you have amazing vision, I could not lie to you." Fang Yuan laughed loudly, admitting it. "What method do you have, aren't you going to tell me?" Fang Yuan replied, "I had already told you the background of this matter. Immortal Crane sect said I was their disciple because they were afraid of the other 9 great sects' interference. This is their weakness, and is something I am going to use to make a breakthrough." "What are you going to do?" Fang Yuan did not keep it from him. "I already have a plan to send a letter to Spirit Affinity House, establishing our first contact." Earlier, Fang Yuan had asked about Spirit Affinity House's information from Mo Yao for this purpose. Tai Bai Yunxing was worried again. Establishing a relationship now and only sending a letter, isn't that too late? The 10 great sects compete with each other, but they also cooperate. Is it possible that Spirit Affinity House would reject your letter and give it to Immortal Crane sect to express goodwill? Of course not, because this letter is very special. Fang Yuan was extremely confident. Chapter 655, Deducing a Gu Recipe. Many flashes of inspiration appeared in his mind. Countless ingredients and Gu worms formed into many different ideas. The thoughts in his mind were also being consumed at a rapid rate. Such intense expenditure had far exceeded Fang Yuan's own limit in thinking speed. The power of a rank 9 Gu is truly terrifying. In fact, I have not even refined wisdom Gu, I am only using a bit of its light of wisdom. Fang Yuan sighed in shock as he went out of the wisdom light halo. He was deducing and perfecting the refinement recipe of Gruel Mud Immortal Gu. Unlike beforehand when he reflected on the current situation or the changes in his body, perfecting an Immortal Gu recipe needed many more fields of consideration. A set of Gu refinement materials contained up to tens of hundreds of different materials. Not to mention the grouping and coordination of different Gu worms. Precisely because of this, the wills in Fang Yuan's mind were depleting at a shocking rate. After a few days of accumulating wills, they were all expended in a dozen breaths' time. The result of this was an advancement of less than 0.1% in the deduction of gruel mud Gu's recipe. But to get such progress, if I did this alone without the help of the light of wisdom, I would need at least half a year. Fang Yuan estimated. A dozen breaths' time in exchange for half a year's time, this showed the great power of wisdom Gu. But Fang Yuan was not satisfied. Deducing Gu recipes required too many areas of consideration, too many of his wills were being consumed, and too quickly. The wills that he accumulated in a few days were quickly used up in such a short time. The result was, he could not deduce more than 0.1% of the Gu recipe. Fang Yuan's original plan was to use wisdom Gu to deduce immortal Gu recipes, before selling them in treasure yellow heaven for profit. But now he encountered a problem. Deducing immortal Gu recipe requires a great amount of will. But mortal Gu produce too little will each time. Even though I have been using these mortal Gu to create wills at full capacity these days, I have almost pushed them to their limits. If I exceed this, the mortal Gu will be damaged, unless I use the rank 6 delight in water and mountain Gu. Fang Yuan thought about it for a while before deciding to give it a go. He consumed 1 bead of green grape immortal essence, activating delight in water and mountain Gu. Swoosh! The immortal Gu floated above his head, bursting out with a brilliant and dazzling light. The light poured down, like a heavenly river, injecting into Fang Yuan's mind. This joyful will was produced at such a grand scale. Compared to rank 5 mortal wisdom path Gu, the will they produced was like a puddle of water. Meanwhile, this joyful will was produced like a great river. As expected of an immortal Gu, Fang Yuan was overjoyed. Joyful will continued to pour and inject into him, only after a long while did it stop. In Fang Yuan's spacious mind, a third of it was filled with joyful will. Special will was a golden color, appearing like sand. Joyful will was bright yellow. That is to say, as long as I activate delight in water and mountain Gu 3 times, my mind would be filled completely. No wonder the market in treasure yellow heaven would have those wisdom path Gu that can make the mind more spacious. Fang Yuan gained some enlightenment from his experiment. Strength path Gu worms modified the Gu master's body. In contrast, wisdom path Gu worms modified the person's mind. Fang Yuan entered the wisdom light halo once again, falling into deep thoughts. Euphoria. This felt way too good. Like there were no limits binding him, everything was clear. For any difficult problem, a breakthrough could be attained in a flash. The only difference was, the harder the problem, the more will would be expended. A vast amount of refinement materials were chosen one by one, countless Gu worms were combined into groups and tested at lightning speed, before splitting them apart again. Fang Yuan showed off his great skills. He felt that there was no problems in this world that could trouble him. This feeling was splendid. Only until all of the joyful will was expended, did Fang Yuan leave the light of wisdom reluctantly. He felt that only a dozen breaths' time had passed by since then. But in reality, 7 minutes had gone by already. Puff! Fang Yuan let out a sigh of turbid air. He shook his head. After leaving the light of wisdom, he immediately went back to his former self. He was still that zombie with slow cognitive abilities. The great difference felt like falling from heaven into hell. Fang Yuan breathed in deeply, adjusting his emotions as he inspected the fruits of his labor. The progress of the deduction of gruel mud immortal Gu's recipe advanced by 1%. U updates. TN. vel/by.com. Compared to before, this was huge progress. Fang Yuan nodded, but he soon shook his head again. He silently left the underground cave, going to Dang Hun Mountain's palace. Junior brother, how is the situation? Tai Bai Yunsheng had been waiting inside the palace for some time. He quickly asked Fang Yuan in concern. He was covered in dust and sand. He had just returned after inspecting the western area of Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Take a seat. Fang Yuan waved to him, taking a few big steps to the main seat and sitting down. Tai Bai Yunsheng looked at Fang Yuan with a curious gaze after choosing the seat closest to him. He knew that Fang Yuan was using Wisdom Gu to deduce an immortal Gu recipe. Not long ago, he had followed Fang Yuan into the underground cave, and had looked at Wisdom Gu from far away. He had finally obtained a lifespan Gu from Fang Yuan some time ago. He had limited lifespan and did not dare to get close to this legendary Gu worm. Fang Yuan leaned on the stone block like it was a chair, his legs were spread open and a pair of his arms were placed on his leg. One pair was crossed over his abdomen, while another pair was at the handle of the seat. The final pair was crossed over his chest. He sat with a grand posture, like an unmoving mountain. He was still and silent, like a giant statue. He sighed, saying, "Mortal Gu were not efficient to use. I tried using the wisdom path immortal Gu delight in water and mountain. The river of joyful will that it produced, under the light of wisdom, allowed my Gu recipe deduction to progress by 1%. Tai Bai Yunsheng heard this and stood up from his seat in excitement. He showed evident joy on his face. 1%. As expected of the rank 9 wisdom Gu. That means, if we use it 100 times, we will be able to deduce an immortal Gu recipe. With these immortal Gu recipes, we can sell them in Treasure Yellow Heaven. This is a huge treasure chest that can yield us endless profits. By then, we will have an unceasing flow of immortal essence stones. To think, that after becoming a zombie, junior brother can actually receive such benefits." These days, Tai Bai Yunsheng had been worrying over cultivation resources. He found out that after becoming a Gu immortal, he needed much more cultivation resources. When Gu master cultivate, they nurture their apertures. When Gu immortal cultivate, they nurture their immortal aperture. There are many different ways one can nurture an immortal aperture. But the ultimate goal was the same, that is to make the immortal aperture's small world more vibrant and diverse. Planting more varieties of plants in the immortal aperture, bringing in more animals, improving the cycle of life and establishing a proper food chain, nurturing and feeding more varieties of Gu worm groups. The more prosperous the immortal aperture, the greater life force it would have, and the faster immortal essence would be produced in the immortal aperture. This was the cultivation path of Gu immortals. This was their way of improving. Thus, in Treasure Yellow Heaven, not only were Gu worms and Gu recipes sold, there were also the sale of beast groups, vegetation, mysterious stones, precious water, and so on. Looking at Tai Bai Yunsheng's excited look, Fang Yuan nodded in satisfaction. "It seems that my method of asking you to inspect Hu Immortal Blessed Land and becoming familiar with the cultivation path of Gu immortals is very effective. You have finally realized the importance of cultivation resources. But unfortunately, although selling immortal Gu recipes is a very profitable trade, we temporarily cannot engage in that." "Ah, why is that?" Tai Bai Yunsheng was confused. "Because the investment is too great." Fang Yuan sighed. "To get something from nothing, to deduce a rank 6 immortal Gu recipe, the amount of green grape immortal essence we would need to expend is at least over 100. Junior brother, didn't you deduce 1% of this immortal Gu recipe?" "That is because what I was deducing was the Gruel Mud immortal Gu remnant recipe. I told you before, earlier I had engaged in the trade of Gruel Mud, thus I obtained many Gruel Mud immortal Gu remnant recipes. But after I collated these remnant recipes, I only obtained this 60% remnant recipe." Fang Yuan answered. Tai Bai Yunsheng was not stupid, he immediately understood Fang Yuan's words. With the light of wisdom, no problem could trouble Fang Yuan. Under normal circumstances, if he encountered difficulty when deducing Gu recipes, they would be hard to resolve. If he was lucky and had a burst of inspiration, he would be able to think of a solution. But if he was unlucky and could not resolve this problem, he would be stuck there for years, or even decades without making any progress. But with Wisdom Gu, Fang Yuan faced no difficulty when deducing Gu recipes. Even if Fang Yuan encountered a problem that he could not solve due to his foundations, he just needed to think more. Using the light of wisdom to think, he only needed to consume more wills in order to resolve this problem. In this way, immortal Gu recipes were easier to deduce towards the later parts. A 60% remnant recipe means it already has a general direction. This could allow Fang Yuan to rule out a large number of Gu refinement elements. On this basis, he progressed by 1% of the deduction. That is to say, if he started from zero, from scratch, and deduced the recipe from nothing, it would be extremely difficult, he would not even reach 1%. Fang Yuan continued, I only have 18 green grape immortal essence beads, while you have 26. Hu immortal blessed land only has 64 beads of Bai Hu's immortal essence. But you and Hu immortal land spirit cannot be under the wisdom light halo. Even if I lend the light in water and mountain immortal Gu to you, the joyful will that you create cannot be used by me. At this point, the gruel mud remnant recipe is the most promising of them, but it also requires about 40 beads of immortal essence from us. Don't forget that we are not safe now. Northern Plains Gu immortals and immortal Crane's sect are going to find trouble with us. Especially if Wisdom Gu is exposed, I'm afraid every Gu immortal in the 5 regions would charge towards us with killing intent. Yes, the investment is too big, and we also need to preserve some green grape immortal essence as a preemptive measure to guard against enemies and accidents. Tai Bai Yunxing nodded, he sighed deeply and looked at the ground, he accepted this fact in disappointment. But immediately after, he raised his head, his eyes shining with light. I have an idea. Junior brother, I remember you told me about the matter with Xianxia land spirit. Master told you about the secrets of 88 True Yang building, thus when you requested help from Xianxia land spirit, you said you deduced it yourself. That caused Xianxia land spirit to assume you were a wisdom path Gu master, and it wanted to work with you to perfect Gu recipes. Oh. Fang Yuan pretended to jolt into realization, he showed an appropriately excited expression on his face, there is such a thing, after becoming a zombie, my brain is so useless, I did not think of this. Old Bai, you are completely right, the best remnant recipe that I have right now is the 60% gruel mud immortal Gu recipe. There must be many remnant recipes in Xianxia land spirit's hands. He probably has remnant recipes with a much higher completion rate. Junior brother, you are familiar with Xianxia land spirit, and you also know the method to enter Xianxia blessed land, we can totally cooperate with Xianxia land spirit. Tai Bai Yunxing thought about this amazing plan and laughed loudly and heartily. Chapter 656, I will take down my brother in the name of justice. Old Bai, your reminder is very true, but I have no way to directly contact Xianxia land spirit. I used 2 opportunities in the past to obtain 2 immortal Gu from that old man, Xianxia land spirit, and I was nearly chased out by him. I don't think I'll be able to contact him. Fang Yuan smiled bitterly. Is that so? Tai Bai Yunxing's joy on his face froze. Linking between 2 blessed lands could be done through whole earth Gu, directly connecting both of their territories. Earlier, when Fang Yuan traded with Immortal Crane sect, he used this method. But Fang Yuan and Xianxia land spirit's relationship was naturally not close to that extent. Most critically, Hu immortal blessed land was in central continent, while Xianxia blessed land was in northern plains, even the whole earth Gu was not easy to use. To directly connect to there, he needed to use Stargate Gu. Stargate Gu came in pairs, but Fang Yuan only had 1 Stargate Gu left now. The other one was destroyed in the wind veil of assimilation. It seems we can only return to northern plains and meet Xianxia land spirit personally, before asking for cooperation. Tai Bai Yunxing sighed. No, there is another method that relies on luck. Fang Yuan hummed, that old land spirit loves refining Gu, but he cannot go out to search for Gu refinement materials. Langyup blessed land's terrain is very plain, it can produce very limited varieties of materials, he will have to go to treasure yellow heaven often. We can wait for him patiently, staring at treasure yellow heaven until his divine sense appears. Right, there is still this method. Tai Bai Yun Sheng's eyes shone. So from now on, I will be relying on you, old Bai. Fang Yuan said as a matter of fact. No problem, count on me. I will go back now and open connecting heaven Gu, linking to treasure yellow heaven. Tai Bai Yunxing patted his chest, he could not wait any longer, he was brought back to his residential area by the land spirit. He chose to build a temporary house at the western area of the blessed land. That was his temporary home. The terrain of Hu immortal blessed land was similar to northern plains. Tai Bai Yunxing did not feel any discomfort living here, he felt a serene feeling like being at home. Having roamed northern plains for about half his life, he had finally found an organization and had settled down, therefore he especially treasured this home. After sending Tai Bai Yunxing away, Fang Yuan fell into deep thought. He had already thought of cooperating with Langya land spirit long ago. In truth, a few days ago, he had asked little Hu immortal to keep an eye on treasure yellow heaven, waiting for old immortal Langya's divine sense. But there was no progress at all. What he was thinking about now was not the matter about Langya land spirit, but about Tai Bai Yunxing. His journey in northern plains was very chaotic. Now during these days when he was in Hu immortal blessed land, he observed Tai Bai Yunxing heavily and gained a lot of insight on this person. Tai Bai Yunxing is indeed a good person. He has ability but no ambition. His intelligence is only that of an average person, what he really has is the wisdom accumulated from his entire life's experiences. He does not have a grasp of the big picture. It is no wonder that even though he was a former young tribe leader, and having roamed for so many years, with sufficient reputation and strength, he did not manage to create a force of his own. Fang Yuan evaluated in his mind. Such a person is best as a follower that closely sticks to him, he should not be left alone due to his lack of leadership capability. Because of his nature and beliefs, if he is far away, not only would he be unable to cooperate, he might even ruin plans. Over these days, Fang Yuan had been in constant contact with Tai Bai Yunxing, their relationship had been improving. During several of their late-night talks, Fang Yuan talked of his experiences since rebirth, only with the addition of the non-existent, Purple Mountain True Monarch. Meanwhile, Tai Bai Yunxing talked about basically all of his life's experiences. Many times, even though Fang Yuan already had some plan in his heart, he still asked Tai Bai Yunxing to come over and discuss it. It might seem like a waste of time, but this was Fang Yuan's elaborate plan. Firstly, it was to test Tai Bai Yunxing's ability and true self, to see if his emotions really came from the bottom of his heart. Secondly, telling him about the current situation without concealing anything increased his sense of belonging, and his feelings of responsibility. Thirdly, it was a type of formless suppression towards Tai Bai Yunxing. The result of all their discussions usually ended up with Fang Yuan's method being used, and Tai Bai Yunxing's method being denied. As this happened more frequently, subconsciously, Tai Bai Yunxing would rely more and more on Fang Yuan, paying greater attention to his plans and denying his own ideas. At crucial moments, Fang Yuan would be able to make decisions without any opposition. They would not quarrel over their own ideas and lead to conflict which could botch a situation. Fang Yuan was not He Lulan. He Lulan had the rank 6 slavery Gu and could enslave a Gu immortal. Fang Yuan did not have it, but Tai Bai Yunxing was neither Bai Ningbing nor He Lulan. Most importantly, Fang Yuan had his own methods, and he believed, even without slavery immortal Gu, he could still subdue Tai Bai Yunxing, to squeeze out his greatest potential and become his tool. This was the confidence of a demonic path overlord. Central Continent, Feihe Mountain. The clouds were abundant in the sky, thousands of cranes were flying. Winds blew on the verdant green mountain. Fang Zheng sat on a cliff, focusing his gaze on thousands of iron-beak flying cranes, as they created different formations according to his will. At times they charged, at times they split into two to pincer attack, and at times they formed a circular defensive formation. The wind blew his long hair, his bright eyes were shining with determination. Tough times make men grow. To Fang Zheng, the Hu Immortal Blessed Lands competition a year ago was a major setback for him. After some consolation, he walked out of his despair, and put in even more effort. He had almost risked his life to cultivate daily. At this time, a voice came from Fang Zheng's aperture. Good, your command of the iron-beak flying cranes have reached a stage where you can manipulate them with ease, they move with a thought from you. Now, you can already go back to the sect to take the flying crane manipulation test, and attempt to get B-grade evaluation. You have a 60% chance of succeeding. If you do, you will get the test reward, a rank 5, 5-hole jade flute Gu. Once you have this Gu, your manipulation of the crane group would reach quasi-enslavement master level. The voice originated from a spirit incubating fleet in Fang Zheng's aperture. Fang Zheng's master, Lord Sky Crane's soul was residing in this Gu worm. Rank 5, 5-hole jade flute Gu. His eyes shone, excitement was all over his face. Yes, master, I will go now. Fang Zheng stood up, he willed, and a large iron-beak flying crane king arrived before him. He jumped and easily got on the crane king's back. Visit N0VL/BIN. For the best novel reading experience. The crane king cried out in a proud tone. Fang Zheng sat on the crane king's back, the crane group flying around him. It was a scene of white as he flew towards Immortal Crane's sect amidst the wind and clouds. Not long after, he arrived at White Jade Square D. The iron-beak flying crane landed in the square. Fang Zheng had just landed, when one of Immortal Crane's sect's disciples ran over quickly, greeting him, Senior Brother Fang Zheng. Fang Zheng nodded, Junior Brother, I am here to take the flying crane manipulation test. Senior Brother Fang Zheng, please follow me. Immortal Crane's sect's disciple led the way. Quickly look, guys, that is Senior Brother Fang Zheng. He is the #1 elite disciple of our batch. Did you hear, Senior Brother Fang Zheng is actually attending the flying crane manipulation test. Senior Brother Fang Zheng is an enslavement path genius. To think that he has already reached the stage of quasi-enslavement path master, he is truly amazing. Along the way, everyone's whispered discussions entered Fang Zheng's ears. Fang Zheng heard them and smiled lightly. He was now fully grown, his body was tall and he had long black hair that resembled a cape, his eyes were crystal clear. Although he looked ordinary, he had quite the disposition and was full of life. Wearing a green and white robe, he looked like a gentleman. It was very comfortable to look at him. Although Senior Brother Fang Zheng is strong, his brother is even more amazing. He is a superb character who managed to obtain Hu Immortal Blessed Land. That's right, according to a reliable source, his brother, Fang Yuan, is secretly a legacy disciple of a certain Supreme Elder. When Spirit Affinity House were on the verge of taking Hu Immortal Blessed Land, the Supreme Elder had no choice but to send Senior Brother Fang Yuan out. As expected, he shocked everyone and sealed the deal, obtaining Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Fang Zheng has a good brother. The Guts Gu on Dang Hun Mountain can strengthen the soul. I can bet that Fang Zheng used the Guts Gu. Otherwise, with just his own hard work, how can he raise his cultivation to rank 5 in 1 year? Furthermore, his enslavement path attainment improved at lightning speed. He is actually going to take the flying crane manipulation test. The tone of these people was sour and bitter. Fang Zheng heard them as his smile slowly vanished. His fists which were hidden in his sleeves were tightly clenched. Brother! Fang Zheng's eyes shone with a trace of darkness. Ever since Fang Yuan used some unthinkable method to snatch Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Immortal Crane's sect had declared publicly that Fang Yuan was Immortal Crane's sect's disciple. During this year, Fang Zheng felt like life had returned to the past, when he was suppressed by Fang Yuan. No matter what great results he obtained or how many improvements he made, others would only praise him briefly before mentioning the even more impressive Fang Yuan. "Calm your spirit, my disciple." Lord Sky Crane's voice came from the spirit incubating flea. Lord Sky Crane's experiences were much richer than Fang Zheng. After these years of staying together, he had grasped a firm understanding of Fang Zheng. He consoled Fang Zheng, "These years, I have seen all of your hard work. You are in no way inferior to your brother. Don't forget, you are now a rank 5 Gu master, a quasi-enslavement master. I bet your brother is not your match right now. In any case, Fang Yuan is going to face extermination soon. The sect has mobilized 3 supreme elders in this plan. They are tasked to take back Hu immortal blessed land. Your brother has no way to survive." 3 supreme elders, that is the battle strength of 3 Gu immortals. Fang Zheng heard this and licked his lips, before his gaze turned a bit dimmer. Lord Sky Crane knew what he was thinking. He laughed and said, "Fang Zheng, don't feel any guilt towards this. Your brother had ventured into the wrong path, he is walking on the demonic path now. He actually slaughtered his entire clan. This makes him a beast worse than pigs or dogs. Fang Yuan is a true and blue demonic head, you cannot feel any sympathy towards him. Killing him is equivalent to benefiting the people of the world. Think about it, if he is alive, how many innocent people would be harmed?" "That's right. Brother's hands are full of blood, he is a murderer. A killer. I will take revenge for my clan, for my uncle and aunt, for Xianxia." Fang Zheng inwardly shouted, urging himself. "Good, that's it." Lord Sky Crane was evidently very happy with Fang Zheng's attitude. "Think about these years, you were training in Fu Hu blessed land, how dangerous and terrifying was it? 1 year outside was 8 years inside Fu Hu blessed land. You became a rank 5 Gu master, suffering so much and enduring so much, wasn't it for the greater plan of taking back Hu immortal blessed land? Don't screw up at the last moment, you cannot disappoint everyone at this most crucial juncture. Don't worry, master. I understand, I will do my best and contribute to the sect, I will exterminate all evil, and take down my brother in the name of justice. I will not disappoint you." Fang Zheng assured resolutely and unhesitantly. Chapter 657, Dong Fang Chang Fan, Minuscule Mountain. The light of wisdom dyed the cave walls with beautiful lights. Fang Yuan quietly stood in it for a good while before opening his eyes, slowly stepping out of the wisdom light halo. The wills in his mind were almost fully consumed. Mortal Gu could only produce limited wills and could not compare to Wisdom Path Immortal Gu. My deduction of Immortal Crane's sex plan has failed, not because I don't have enough wills, but because I don't have enough clues. Fang Yuan reflected inwardly. After being in the Wisdom Light Halo many times over these days, he had summed up his experiences. Wisdom Gu was different from natural inspiration. Wisdom Gu emitted the light of wisdom which could provide unending insights to Gu Master. But the result of the thoughts and deductions were based on the Gu Master's foundation as well as the clues they had accumulated. Fang Yuan's attempt at deducing Immortal Crane's sex conspiracy against Hu immortal blessed land failed because he did not have enough evidence. In summary, the deeper the Gu Master's foundations and the more evidence they gathered, the more accurate the outcome of the deduction would be. Naturally, when there was more evidence, there would be more factors to consider, and the amount of thoughts and will consumed would also become larger. Especially when deducing Immortal Gu recipes, the factors to consider were too many, thus the wills consumed were enormous. As for natural inspiration, it was a precious experience when a Gu Master advances to a Gu Immortal. During this process, the Gu Master questions heaven and earth would directly provide the solutions with no need for the Gu Master to think. Let's take a difficult mathematical problem from Earth, for example, solving a multivariate equation. If the Gu master used Wisdom Gu, his thoughts would quickly consume while he would obtain numerous insights, causing there to be many paths to the solution. Some of these paths might be dead ends while some might give wrong results. Only a few would be correct paths which could deduce the solution. While natural inspiration would be akin to directly giving the correct answers. The Gu master would obtain the correct answer, but they had to know how to use it. Thus, during natural inspiration, the Gu master should not ask overly profound questions. Feng Yuan did not directly ask about eternal life. Maybe heaven and earth would give him an answer, but he would absolutely not be able to comprehend it. It was like a child who had not learned mathematics seeing a linear equation, they naturally would not be able to comprehend the answer. To comprehend this answer, the child would have to learn numbers, unknown variables, positive and negative numbers, and so on. But this would only be the foundation of the foundation. To Gu masters, even if they obtained answers to excessively profound questions, they would not be able to comprehend it or be able to use it. Even if they asked about all aspects of this difficult problem during natural inspiration and comprehended the basics, the time consumed would be too high, the amount of information would also be so large that the mind would not be able to bear it. As such, the best way to make use of natural inspiration was to ask according to the state of one's current foundation, then stabilize the foundation and progress step by step. But within Wisdom Path, there is an immortal Gu that can allow a Gu immortal to directly obtain answers. That is Heavenly Secret Gu. Gu masters do not need to have their thoughts collide nor make deductions, as long as they grabbed onto that strand of heavenly secret, they would directly obtain the answer. In the records of history, this Gu was created by Paradise Earth Immortal Venerable. He possessed a rank 8 Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu, but after his death, this Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu disappeared without a trace and there has been no news regarding it since then. Feng Yuan suddenly recalled Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu. Gu worms had one ability, and even the rank 9 Wisdom Gu was no exception. The higher the ranks of the Gu, the more powerful their ability was. If Wisdom Gu was truly activated, its effect would definitely be terrifying. But even if it was stronger, it could not replicate the effect of Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu. It was rumored that Paradise Earth Immortal Venerable was the rank 9 Gu master who could detect and react to the heavenly fate most closely. He created Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu to interact with heaven and earth, and also to experience natural inspiration again. If I have Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu, it would combine exquisitely with Wisdom Gu. Meanwhile, if anyone else used Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu to investigate me, all of my secrets would likely be exposed. Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu could let Gu masters directly question heaven and earth. There were no events in the world that heaven and earth did not know of. It was as the saying goes, except you and me, only heaven and earth know. As for other Wisdom Path Gu worms, Feng Yuan did not need to worry for the moment. The wind veil of assimilation had swallowed everything, cleaning up all the traces of crimes Feng Yuan had committed in Imperial Court Blessed Land. Without Heavenly Secret Immortal Gu, Wisdom Path Gu masters would have to make deductions according to normal methods, and that was to gather as much evidence and clues as possible. They were unable to plunder any crucial clues from Imperial Court Blessed Land and could only begin investigating from the Imperial Court contest. It was not impossible to deduce Feng Yuan's true identity with this, it was only that the probability was low and the time required would be longer. Northern Plains, Jade Pool Blessed Land. From a bird's eye view, the Blessed Land was covered with innumerable large and small deep pools with the color of a mixture of blue and green. Led by Chanyu tribe's Gu Immortal, Tong Zhu, around 10 Gu Immortals of Northern Plains' righteous path slowly descended from the air. The noble Jade Pool Blessed Land is truly unique and fresh. These innumerable jade pools are like the stars in the sky, their beauty unmatched. A female Gu Immortal strolled through the sky, expressing her admiration. Her hair that was 20 to 30 feet long draped behind her and was extremely eye-catching. All of these jade pools have different types of water, raising countless aquatic species. Dongfang tribe's fish groups and water vegetation have been famous for a long time in Treasure Yellow Heaven. A male Gu immortal opened the third vertical eye on his forehead and gazed at the jade pools with a shining gaze. Lord Murongqing Si and Lord Guan Shenjiao are exaggerating. My tribe's jade pool blessed land has only been in operation for just over 6,000 years. The landscape cannot compare to Murong tribe's Yinyang blessed land, while in terms of productivity, it still falls short of Guan tribe's Shihuang blessed land. Gu immortal Dongfang Yikong, who was attending to them, welcomed them with a smile, modestly talking of Dongfang tribe specialties. Jade Pool Blessed Land was the headquarters of the Huangjin family's Dongfang tribe, a superforce. A group of Gu immortals slowly descended. This, among the myriad jade pools, did not appear to be a remarkable location. Beside a jade pool was a small hut. An elderly man was sitting beside the pool in front of the house, in the midst of fishing. These are underworld eels. Guan Shenjiao's vertical eye on his forehead gazed at the pool before blurting out in shock at the scene inside the clear pool. When the other Gu immortals heard it, some of them also showed slightly moved expressions. Sir Dongfang, we have already not seen each other for over 10 years. Thinking of back then when we charged into Snowy Mountain and fought side by side. Sigh, time really flies by. Everyone stood still, as Gu immortal Tong Zhu, who had the highest cultivation, made a greeting. Lord Tong Zhu, you are still as graceful as ever while this old man has one foot in the grave. I don't dare to compare with you. The elderly man who was fishing stood up slowly. He was Dongfang Changfan, Northern Plains #1 Wisdom Path Gu immortal. Dongfang Yikong walked to Changfan's side. As Changfan continued, Dongfang tribe is honored with the presence of all of you. Being able to welcome everyone to my humble abode is an extreme honor. Everyone, please come in. Dongfang Changfan led everyone inside the hut. The inside of the hut was spacious. There was a plaza and also halls. There were 16 stone statues at the plaza, seemingly arranged in order as well as randomly, as they were separated by varied distances. The expressions on them were subtle, as if containing some kind of mystical pattern. This is Dongfang tribe's rank 6 immortal Gu house, modest thatched hut. It truly is brilliant. One Gu immortal praised directly. Visit N0V/BIN. For the best novel reading experience. Dongfang Changfan led everyone to the administration hall and seated them. Northern Plains Righteous Path Gu immortals, representing all the different forces, had gathered under one roof. Dongfang Changfan sat at the main seat and smiled as he observed everyone. This time, I have invited everyone here personally in order to make a transaction with you. Guan Shenjiao and the others glanced at each other with no one taking the initiative to speak. It was still Tong Zhu who responded. Sir Dongfang already decided to not make deductions for others tens of years ago. But in the letter, you said you were making an exception for us, and will deduce the true culprit of the destruction of True Yang building or perhaps other aspects. But I wonder how we can pay for this transaction. Dongfang Changfan coughed several times before sighing. This old man's lifespan is at its end and I know there is no hope in prolonging my life. But before I depart, I have some concerns lingering in my heart. One is the tribe's growth and the other is my tribe's descendants. I hope I can make this transaction with everyone. This old man shall make deductions for each of your tribes once, and after I die, I hope everyone can ally with my Dongfang tribe. Alliance? Yes, this old man has already roughly prepared the alliance contracts. Everyone can examine them and if you have any objections, we can modify it right here. Dongfang Changfan took out 2 East Window Gu which he then handed to the Gu immortals. The Gu immortals skimmed over the contract one after another. The alliance conditions were extremely lax. Dong Fang Chang Fan did not even request for mutual help and protection among the allies, he only requested that after he died, they had to protect Dong Fang tribe's peace for 50 years. In this time period, the parties in the contract could not target, suppress, or attack Dong Fang tribe. The Gu immortals involuntarily felt a rush of excitement. Dong Fang Chang Fan was currently the #1 wisdom path Gu immortal of Northern Plains. Besides him, there was no one else suitable to deduce the true culprit of Tru Yang Building's destruction. In the cultivation of Gu immortals, who would not encounter some difficult problems relating to their cultivation? Or perhaps, they might obtain immortal Gu remnant recipes that require deductions? With Dong Fang Chang Fan, these issues were very likely to be resolved. Even more importantly, after Imperial Court blessed land perished and 88 Tru Yang Building collapsed, large numbers of Gu worms were brought over by the formless fists to all regions of Northern Plains. The aura of immortal Gu manifested in many places, causing the Gu immortals to contest over them. At this crucial time, if Dong Fang Chang Fan deduced the location of an immortal Gu, then they were very likely to get that immortal Gu. Everyone was more than moved and they couldn't help but praise Dong Fang Chang Fan's shrewdness. If it were during normal times, Dong Fang Chang Fan's bargaining chip might be somewhat less important. But now, when one deduction was very likely to represent one immortal Gu, all the Gu immortals were moved. Great, Sir Dong Fang, our Chanyu tribe accepts your conditions. Tong Zhu spoke first, then He tribe, Murong tribe, every tribe's representatives also accepted. This situation was within Dong Fang Chang Fan's expectations. His smile became even brighter. Since this is the case, Fairy Li Shan, please take action. Fairy Li Shan. While everyone was surprised, a rank 6 female Gu immortal walked from behind the hall and appeared in front of everyone. Fairy Li Shan, I trust you have been well. A Gu immortal greeted. Another Gu immortal laughed. Sir Dong Fang sure has made ample preparations, even inviting over Fairy Li Shan. It is just that this jade pool blessed land does not have any mountains or rivers. How will we make the oath? Dong Fang Yi Kong, who had been silent all this time, stood from beside Dong Fang Chang Fan, and spoke, everyone, please wait and see. He then opened his palm, lights and vibrant colors floated in the center of his palm, revealing a miniature mountain peak. Could this be, minuscule mountain? Murong Qing Si opened her graceful eyes wide as she reacted first, saying in a disbelieving tone. Exactly. Dong Fang Yi Kong gave a modest smile, but the pride within him could not be concealed. A commotion erupted among the Gu immortals. Chapter 658, Difficulty in Resolving the Issues, He Lulan appears. In the underground cave, the light of wisdom flickered back and forth from bright to dim. Fang Yuan quietly stood inside it. Only when the wills inside his mind were fully consumed did he open his eyes and step out of the wisdom light halo. The deduction he made had succeeded, but Fang Yuan was gloomy because of it. To seal spring-autumn cicada, as much as over 6,000 mortal Gu are required, among them, almost half are rank 5, with rare Gu worms reaching 2,000, and there are also about 800 ancient Gu worms. These ancient Gu worms are either extinct or on the brink of extinction. My initial estimate is that I require about 23 immortal essence stones to use this method. Fang Yuan was in a poverty-stricken state. 23 immortal essence stones were a hopeless number for him currently. But Fang Yuan had to brace himself to accomplish this task. Because spring-autumn cicada's recovery was becoming faster and faster, making the situation of the first aperture more critical. Fortunately, with Fang Yuan having turned into a zombie, his first aperture turned into a dead aperture, thus it was able to hold on till now. If the aperture was like before, it might have already burst. According to the current situation, I estimate I still have over 2 months to plan and prepare. If this time limit is crossed, the first aperture will not be able to endure even if it is already dead. Fang Yuan was feeling a heavy pressure. He was now a member of the living dead. Even if his first aperture was destroyed, he would not die. But losing the first aperture would no doubt greatly reduce his future cultivation potential, and that would be an immeasurable loss. Fang Yuan was in a difficult situation, and there was only one feasible method to earn 23 immortal essence stones within a short period of time: selling immortal Gu recipes. Returning to Dang Hun Palace, Fang Yuan called in Tai by Yunsheng. I have been paying close attention to Treasure Yellow Heaven over these days, taking almost no rest. But Langya Land Spirit's divine sense has not appeared since the beginning. Tai Bai Yunsheng's answer made Fang Yuan feel disappointment. Langya Land Spirit's divine sense called itself Langya Old Immortal in Treasure Yellow Heaven, and it was very active at that. But now, it had not appeared at all, almost like it was missing. Fang Yuan keenly sensed Langya Land Spirit was likely to be facing some problems. He recalled his previous life where Langya Blessed Land had suffered a total of 7 waves of attacks. Previously, when I was in Northern Plains, the second wave of experts had already attacked Langya Blessed Land. Could it be, the third wave of attacks has already occurred and Langya Land Spirit is busy dealing with it, thus having no time to refine Gu? Memories of Fang Yuan's previous life were not able to help him in this aspect. He only remembered about the 7 waves of attacks, and did not remember the detailed timings of these attacks. Even if he remembered the exact timing, this world was already influenced by him and had experienced huge changes, who is to say that the changes upon changes might not have shifted the attacks to an earlier time. My horizons have been continually broadened these days. A piece of 10,000-year profound ice costs half an immortal essence stone. Half a kilogram of Hurricane Mountain pepper has the selling price of an immortal essence stone. What are divine jade pearls? 10 of them actually cost half an immortal essence stone. There is also, what's that white spiral silk? Its price is even more ridiculous, a pinky-sized amount costs 3 immortal essence stones. Heavens, right now, I realized how poor I am. Tai Bai Yunsheng chattered on about his harvest over this time, speaking in an excited tone. During these days, as Fang Yuan interacted with Tai Bai Yunsheng all the time, he gradually discovered Tai Bai Yunsheng had a shortcoming, that was his prattling mouth. He was talkative. Fang Yuan handed a letter Gu and interrupted his chattering. This is the letter sent by Immortal Crane Sect, please read. Tai Bai Yunsheng sent his consciousness inside, his brows soon frowned into a knot. In this second letter from Immortal Crane Sect, their tone was even more harsh and fierce, already making their intention to attack Hu Immortal Blessed Land exceptionally clear. Immortal Crane Sect even used the tone of the victor, demanding Fang Yuan to surrender. These guys have gone crazy for Dang Hun Mountain. If it were me, I would at least first stabilize you, then carry out hidden attacks. Aren't they afraid their actions will make us take preventive measures? Tai Bai Yunsheng said in a displeased tone. This is the power and confidence of Immortal Crane Sect. They are one of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent and have an incomparably deep foundation, having stood tall and straight at Feihe Mountain for hundreds of thousands of years. Besides this, I think they are trying to pressure me and also probe the intention of my backers. Fang Yuan analyzed. Yes, Immortal Crane Sect is stronger than any single super force of Northern Plains by some degree. We are too weak, while they are a colossus becoming more and more overbearing. It will be very difficult for us to protect Hu Immortal Blessed Land from them. Tai Bai Yunsheng spoke carefully, glancing at Fang Yuan several times. He already had thoughts of retreating, giving up Hu Immortal Blessed Land and moving far away, he just did not openly express it. Fang Yuan knew his thoughts. Tai Bai Yunsheng was a healing Gu master, he was benevolent and could be said to be feeble, seriously lacking the spirit to make a stand. Fang Yuan did not rebuke Tai Bai Yunsheng's intentions. In fact, Fang Yuan had also thought of giving up and abandoning Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Dang Hun Mountain represented extremely huge benefits, and Immortal Crane's sect and other super forces would definitely want to possess it. However, that was, of course, only as a last resort. As long as there existed hope along with benefits, it could be said that Fang Yuan would absolutely not speak of giving up easily. Fang Yuan thus consoled Tai by Yun Sheng. Immortal Crane's sect is one of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent, a super force, a behemoth, but they also have their worries. How many methods can they use to deal with us specifically? I dare to guarantee, it is not as exaggerated as you imagine, especially when they are greatly underestimating our true battle strength. Life was not easy. Immortal Crane's sect also had its own problems. New sects were emerging endlessly in Central Continent, continually bringing huge impacts to the 10 great ancient sects. The 10 great ancient sects occupied the most important positions in Central Continent with the best cultivation resources. They naturally would be subjected to competition from all sides. In history, Immortal Crane's sect had experienced golden ages several times, but at present, there was a clear disparity compared to their most prosperous periods. Immortal Crane's sect had not expanded for many years already. This meant they were under some restraints. Since Junior Brother wants to battle Immortal Crane's sect, I shall risk my life to accompany you. Don't worry, no matter how dangerous the situation gets, I will support you till the last moment. Tai Bai Yunxing patted his chest and swore. Fang Yuan nodded. I also ask Old Bai to not worry. I, Gu Fang Yuan, am not a stubborn man. If there was nothing to be done and the situation was truly unfavorable, I would definitely take the initiative to retreat. Forcing back Immortal Crane sect's first wave of attacks perhaps won't be difficult, but the main problem does not lie here. Immortal Crane sect is a very big sect. If we repel them, they will at once arrive with another wave. After this continues for a few times, Immortal Crane sect's offense will become stronger and they will start treating us more seriously. We need to rely on another great force to resolve this issue, making an alliance with another ancient sect. Tai Bai Yunxing repeatedly nodded in complete agreement, but Junior Brother, you have already sent a letter to Spirit Affinity House, but until now they have yet to reply. Was our letter Gu intercepted by Immortal Crane sect? How about we send some more letters? Fang Yuan shook his head. The letter Gu he contacted Spirit Affinity House with was not his, but the rank 5 letter sending green bird Gu created by Feng Jiu Gu. Back then, Fang Yuan defeated Feng Jin Huang and obtained Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Feng Jin Huang was indignant and sent a challenge letter using this letter sending green bird Gu. But Fang Yuan did not respond to the challenge and instead had been detaining this letter Gu. He had already speculated this letter Gu's owner was very likely to be Feng Jiu Gu. The reason being that Feng Jin Huang had yet to reach rank 5 back then. Besides Feng Jiu Gu, it was also likely to be his wife, Feng Jin Huang's mother, Fairy Bai Qing. Regardless of who the owner was, this letter Gu had already been lent to Fang Yuan, its original purpose being to allow Fang Yuan to respond to the challenge letter. And Fang Yuan used this letter Gu to contact Spirit Affinity House. Fang Yuan had been very confident regarding this letter, but Spirit Affinity House still had yet to reply after so long, so he was somewhat unsure now. According to the common sense conjecture, letter sending green bird Gu was created by Feng Jiu Gu, which represented this expert's will and prestige to some degree. To intercept this green bird Gu and risk offending his impressive and dignified presence, this was not at all likely. However, this possibility could not be completely excluded as well. Thus Fang Yuan nodded and accepted Tai Bai Yunxing's suggestion. Okay, let's wait 7 days. If we still don't receive a reply by then, we will send another letter. Time passed day by day. Hu Immortal Blessed Land was in a predicament. A strong enemy was approaching from the outside, while on the inside, cultivation resources were lacking. Even if Fang Yuan used his zombie body in Wisdom Gu to deduce and sell immortal Gu recipes of the highest grade, the regretful part was that he did not have the capital to kickstart this plan and could only put it aside for the time being. Xianxia Land Spirit and Spirit Affinity House were the keys to break through these predicaments. But it was a pity that these two keys stayed in the dark with no messages from them. Who knew when Fang Yuan would receive news from them? Perhaps he wouldn't for his whole life. Destiny created obstacles. The road ahead of Fang Yuan was once again shrouded in obscurity. It seems my luck is still not too good. Fang Yuan scoffed at himself. There was nothing he could do, since he possessed Spring-Autumn Cicada, his luck was likely to only get worse. He tried asking Mo Yao about improved immortal Gu remnant recipes, but Mo Yao claimed that she did not know them. She was residing in Fang Yuan's body and had gone through the final battle in Northern Plains with him. She knew Fang Yuan possessed Wisdom Gu and thus it was not hard for her to speculate Fang Yuan's intentions. Mo Yao was a refinement path grandmaster, she very likely knew immortal Gu remnant recipes which matched Fang Yuan's criteria. But she did not reply, and since Fang Yuan lacked wisdom path methods, he could do nothing to her. Under this kind of situation, He Lulan suddenly arrived at Dang Hun Mountain. Fang Yuan lost a Stargate Gu and was already not able to return to Northern Plains alone. He Lulan being able to come to Dang Hun Mountain was naturally because of fixed immortal travel. As for how she knew the scenery here, that was because Fang Yuan had sent a will to her of his own accord. This was the agreed-upon plan, but Fang Yuan was still somewhat surprised. If I am not wrong, there is still half a month left before the limit of our agreed-upon time, right? The situation has changed, my friend. He Lulan tones was grave, revealing a trace of worry. Making this formidable and ambitious person anxious, the situation in Northern Plains indeed did not seem to be optimistic. However, He Lulan soon realized her flaw and concealed all her emotions, speaking with a cold smile. Naturally, I have another goal, that is to make sure you are not on guard. After all, this is your headquarters, in case you arranged traps against me, I would be messing up your plans by arriving earlier. Fang Yuan laughed, appearing unperturbed, as if there were no issues that could perplex him. After the Battle of Northern Plains, you and I are already tied together for better or for worse. But for complete cooperation, your previous conditions are still insufficient. Vischten. V.E. Chapter 659, The Dirtiness of Humans. Hearing Fang Yuan say, insufficient, He Lulan snorted in displeasure. Fang Yuan, you are not very clear about Northern Plains' situation, I will tell you right now. Not long ago, Northern Plains' #1 Wisdom Path Gu Immortal, Dong Fang Chang Fan, invited all of the super tribes and personally made deductions for them. His condition was that they had to ally with Dong Fang tribe, and within the 50 years of his death, they are not allowed to target or suppress Dong Fang tribe. Oh. Fang Yuan's gaze focused, there's such a thing. Then, what did he deduce? Reportedly, Dong Fang Chang Fan made one deduction for each tribe, regarding Gu recipes, appearance of immortal Gu, or some tips for killing desolate beasts. He has already deduced much of your information, though I do not know the deeper details. But now, everyone knows that you are not a Northern Plains Gu master, but there is also a Northern Plains Gu master colluding with you. Tai Bai Yunxing's pupils shrunk, he said with some fear, he actually deduced so many things. As expected of Dong Fang Chang Fan. He Lulan snickered, continuing, Fang Yuan, our lives are tied together now. If I die, who is to say that I will not expose you and Tai Bai Yunxing? Other than that, is Wisdom Gu in your hands? Tai Bai Yunxing's expression changed, he firmly wanted to deny it, but he stopped himself from acting rashly. Fang Yuan calmly laughed, how is that possible? Wisdom Gu was already destroyed in the wind veil of assimilation, how could I have brought it here? Tai Bai Yunxing immediately praised him in his mind. Fang Yuan's skills in lying were simply spectacular. His tone and expression were flawless, it was filled with pity, regret and other sad emotions, it was as if he really had narrowly missed out in obtaining wisdom Gu. He Lulan could not see any flaws in his performance, but next, she squinted, saying in a thuggish tone, I don't care if you really lost wisdom Gu, I only know that wisdom Gu could have taken the initiative to follow you under the pressure of survival. Hee, you don't have to deny it now. I'm sure you understand my idea, it is not safe for you to hide in Central Continent. It doesn't matter if wisdom Gu is really in your hands, as long as I spread information that wisdom Gu is with you, there will be nowhere for you to hide. The entire world's Gu immortals will chase you down like lunatics, until they get to the truth. Are you threatening me? Fang Yuan's expression turned cold, he slowly stood up. Hey Lulan, you have some guts. Do you not know that you are now on Dang Hun Mountain? As long as we instruct it, the land spirit will use Dang Hun Mountain and kill you right here. Tai Bai Yunxing shouted. Hey Lulan laughed with her head high, she said fearlessly, ha ha ha, even if this is a dragon's nest or a tiger's den, what can you do to me? I made some arrangements before I came, as long as I do not return in 3 days, the entirety of Northern Plains will know that you apprentice brothers are the culprits behind the collapse of True Yang Building, furthermore, the entire world will know that wisdom Gu is with you. Tai Bai Yunxing's expression froze, He Lulan indeed came prepared, this was targeting his weakness. But at this time, Fang Yuan's eerie words made He Lulan's laughter stop. He Lulan, I know you are not afraid of death, but have you forgotten your hatred? He Lulan's expression changed, her aura diminished as her eyes were like lightning, looking at Fang Yuan, state your conditions. You have to agree with my first condition, that is, you have to return fixed immortal travel to its owner, me. Next, Fang Yuan raised 4 fingers, secondly, after we cooperate, during the process of your revenge, the loot will be split 4 to 6, for you and us respectively. After all, Tai Bai Yunxing and I make up 2 Gu immortals. He Lulan snorted, do you think you have a helper while I don't? But never mind, I accept these conditions. She hesitated for a bit, but she still chose to give in, even though she had a tough personality. Fang Yuan smiled lightly, he could see her sincerity from this, he continued, lastly, I need to know the entire story of this, as well as the reason why you need to kill your father personally. He Lulan was silent for a while, but she soon agreed, you are indeed overly suspicious, I can satisfy all 3 of your conditions, this is nothing I can't speak of anyway. Next, in their conversation, Fang Yuan finally understood the secret behind He Lulan's thirst for revenge. The root of all this was actually 88 True Yang Building. In True Yang Building, there was a true inheritance called Yang Life Extension Method, it had been taken by He Qing long ago. Fang Yuan had actually seen the empty light lump of the Yang Life Extension Method by coincidence in the past. This true inheritance was created by Giant Sun Immortal Venerable when he researched about Renzu for life extension methods. To use this method, a male and female Gu immortal have to cooperate, using copulation to extend the lifespan of one of them. But there was a flaw in this. If one gains lifespan, the other must lose lifespan. In other words, it was to transfer the lifespan of one person to the other. The story of Su Xian's night elopement had long since been widely spread in Northern Plains, it had given many young women in Northern Plains the courage to find their true love, to take the first step. 200 years ago, Su Xian was the daughter of a concubine in Su tribe, her status was not high and she was often serving wine to guests in banquets, like a servant. Ch. CK4. EWST. Rise on no/v/l/bin. C0m. Once, when Su tribe leader was attending to He Qing, Su Xian poured wine for him and fell in love with him at first sight. However, Sioux tribe leader harmed He Qing in secret, using a poison goo on him, causing his strength to fall to rock bottom, and he was chased down by enemies. Su Xian'er learnt of this and ran out of her tribe's campsite in the middle of the night, to save He Qing who had only met her once. Back then, she only had rank 1 cultivation, but during the night there were wild wolf groups roaming, it was extremely dangerous and she was simply courting death. But due to coincidence, she found the unconscious He Qing. He Qing was thus saved, and their following conversation became a classic that was passed down in northern plains. He had asked Su Xian'er, "I was plotted against by your tribe leader and you are a Sioux tribesman, why would you save an enemy of your tribe?" Su Xian'er then answered, "Lord has a noble spirit, this humble girl fell in love at first sight." Sioux tribe leader is short-sighted and plotted against Lord under the persuasion of some petty people, but he never considered the result of offending He tribe. If he was allowed to have his way, Sioux tribe is destined to become a sacrificial pawn between two super tribes. People say Lord repays a favor received by 100 times. This humble girl saved Lord today and only hopes Lord can give me a place to stay. It is just and proper for Lord to take revenge against Sioux tribe, but I hope Lord can be merciful and leave behind a trace of bloodline for Sioux tribe. He Qing was overwhelmed at this sight, he tightly held Su Xian'er's hand and swore, "Your love is as deep as the sea, I, He Qing, am not a cruel person, how could I not repay you? From today onwards, you will be my only wife. I will not care for any other beauties, no matter how beautiful they are. In this life, I will never betray you." From then on, the two of them became a loving couple that respected each other equally. 100 years later, they both became Gu immortals, and the story was a legend of northern plains. But most people did not know that Sioux tribe faced extermination soon after. He Qing had many wives and children, Su Xian'er was neither the first, nor the last. He Qing and Su Xian'er had a daughter, she followed her father's surname, while getting the name Lu Lan. Years later, Su Xian'er died, and He Qing was extremely aggrieved, he announced to the public, his wife's body had deteriorated after giving birth to He Lu Lan, she fell heavily ill and her strength fell drastically, thus she died a few years later in her blessed land's earthly calamity. He had obtained the Enyang life extension method in the true inheritance secluded domain, he kept it very secretive. For his own selfish desires, he lied to my mother with ill intentions. My mother did not know the details and because she trusted and cooperated with him, almost all of her lifespan was taken by him mercilessly. After my mother died, he concealed the truth, thus he could still openly be a righteous path Gu immortal. He absorbed my mother's aperture and took all the Gu worms that she accumulated in her life. He is a coward, a dirty and despicable scoundrel, in order to live longer, he actually plotted against the person who loved him the most. Before mother died, she saw his true colors and told me to be careful of him. As expected, mother was right. There was a problem with his cultivation, the lifespan that he took away was consumed very quickly, he is now facing another crisis of dwindling lifespan. This time, his target is me. I have the great strength true martial physique, once I advance to a Gu immortal, my foundations will be extremely firm. If he uses the Enyang life extension method on me, less lifespan would be wasted in the process, and he would gain much more lifespan. He Lu Lan spilled all of the secrets hidden in the dark, in her calm tone, one could nonetheless sense her utter hatred. Tai Bai Yunxing shook his head as he listened, to think that Lord He Qing is such a person, this is really disappointing. He was a prospective Gu immortal candidate in the past, with high hopes to become one, he had interacted with He tribe's Gu immortal, He Bai, in secret, and he was even recruited. Thus, Tai Bai Yunxing's impression of He tribe had always been good. He Lu Lan's words destroyed this good impression. Humph, this is the so-called righteous path, who knows how many dirty and disgusting things are going on underneath this glorious surface. In contrast, the demonic path consists of countless characters that are more straightforward. He Lu Lan scoffed. No wonder you didn't respond to He Cheng when he called you at the point when the wind veil of assimilation was cut open. Fang Yuan nodded. He looked at He Lu Lan again, feeling a different emotion. He Lu Lan was born with a golden spoon, yet this actually was a tragedy. Her own father harmed her mother, and was now targeting her, attempting to take her lifespan. Lacking the warmth of a family, under threats and dangers for many years, she had no option but to disguise herself while secretly putting in immense effort, swearing to take revenge for her mother. This was likely the reason why she obtained such a formidable personality. Where there is a cause, there will be consequences. There is a saying called, heroes often meet their end. The hero here could also be replaced with formidable characters. But in fact, it is not that heroes and conquerors often meet desperate situations, it is the desperate situations that create them. In this way, they are people with very pitiful lives, they often encounter and feel much greater pain than normal people. But because of this pain, they learn and become who they are. Those who live in happiness, living like an upright person, being open and honest without any rough rides in life, while attaining numerous achievements and gaining reputation and praise. Are there truly such people in real life? Fang Yuan thought about Earth, about the 500 years of his previous life, and scoffed. Where there are high achievers, there are sacrifices. Those who are higher-ups often need to sacrifice their morals. Of course, there are outliers, lucky people, and those who rely on their family, but how long can they last? How many will be left in the end? Legend says, when Ren Zhu started walking on the road of life, his vision changed, it was pure darkness. He took the first step. Pi up. At the next moment, he stepped into the mud. He raised his foot, wiping it with his hand, it was full of mushy mud and extremely smelly. He was hesitant to move forward. At this moment, Self-Gu said, "O human, do not hesitate, if you want to walk on your own road, you will need to rely on your own legs. When your leg steps on the road, do not be afraid of dirtiness." Chapter 660, Snowy Mountain Alliance. Outside the window of a room, snow was silently falling down. The fragrance of tea pervaded inside the quiet room. A woman was sitting beside the vermilion-red window frame. She was wearing an embroidered leather skirt, characteristic of Northern Plains women. The leather skirt was embroidered with purplish-red flower buds, while the edges were glittering with silvery light. She bound her hair with a sapphire blue ribbon which had a pure white pearl inlaid in the middle. Her eyes were drooping, emphasizing her thick eyelashes. Her breathing was soft and her hands that were as white as the snow moved slowly, concentrating completely on brewing tea. The quiet room was not large and she was the only person inside. But on the table there were 4 teacups. A rich jade-green light suddenly appeared in the quiet room. The light dissipated to reveal an elderly figure. The elderly man was tall with an eccentric appearance. His hair was gray and his face was filled with wrinkles. His eyes displayed one who had gone through the vicissitudes of life, warm and tenacious, containing wisdom accumulated in all of his lifetime. The woman who was brewing the tea stood up at the sight of the elderly man and smiled with interest. "You are Tai Bai Yunsheng." The elderly man was Tai Bai Yunsheng. He quickly looked around him before greeting the woman. "Junior greets Senior Fairy Li Shan." The woman nodded with a smile. She was an influential figure in the limelight among Northern Plains Gu immortals, a rank 7 Gu immortal, Fairy Li Shan. She looked youthful and beautiful, but her true age was much greater than Tai Bai Yunsheng's. Tai Bai Yunsheng confirmed the safety of the surroundings before opening his immortal aperture, from which 2 human shadows leaped out. One turned into He Lu Lan while the other was an 8-armed immortal zombie as tall as 6 meters with a fierce appearance. It was none other than Gu Yu Fang Yuan. "Little ant, I am back. Hei Lulan walked towards Fairy Li Shan, her expression was still cold but her gaze revealed a trace of affection. Fairy Li Shan glanced at Hei Lulan warmly and sighed, then turned her gaze towards Fang Yuan and Tai Baiyun Sheng. The relationship between me and Little Lan has always been a secret, to the extent that outsiders aren't even aware we know each other. Today, she exposed this secret of her own accord. It can clearly be seen that she sincerely wishes to cooperate with you two guests. Especially you, Fang Yuan. Little Lan had mentioned you to me many times over these days. You accomplished such a huge matter, bringing even 88 True Yang building down. Fang Yuan laughed heartily and said with the hoarse voice specific to zombies, Fairy is exaggerating, all this commotion is not what I wished for. To speak the truth, I had been doubting Hei Lu Lan's proposal for cooperation since the beginning, but who could have thought, Hei Lu Lan had such a close relationship with you. This is the best situation, Fairy, with the oath to your immortal Gu, mountain pledge, our alliance can be firm and solid. Not long ago, at Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Hei Lu Lan exposed the reason for her hatred. Then she revealed her relationship with Fairy Li Shan. Fang Yuan was surprised and yet also not surprised. Hei Lu Lan was under the strict supervision of Gu Immortal Hei Cheng. It would be difficult for her to obtain her current achievements just by relying on her own strength. Besides her own efforts, there definitely was outside help. Please take a seat, this snow oil tea has just been steeped. Fairy Li Shan extended her hand to indicate Fang and Tai to be seated. Fang Yuan waved his hand in refusal, let's make an oath and establish the alliance first, it won't be too late to drink tea then. Virtuous Junior Fang is quite decisive. Fairy Li Shan lightly praised before calling out an immortal Gu. This immortal Gu resembled a beetle. It was thick and solid, even bigger than an adult's palm. Its body was ash gray with a stony texture, a pair of large pincers grew on its head, its back was not glossy and was instead rugged like mountains, and there were specks of stripes, like moss, on the joints of its legs. Fairy Li Shan aptly explained, this is a rank 6 information path immortal Gu, as famous as Sea Oath Gu. As long as you choose a mountain to pledge to and as long as this mountain still exists, the oath cannot be violated. Virtuous Junior Fang, I wonder which mountain you want to choose. Fang Yuan slightly raised his brows, then he pointed outside and laughed hoarsely, what other place can be better than this mountain? Tai Bai Yunxing asked, not understanding the situation, what mountain is this? This mountain is called Snowy Mountain. Fairy Li Shan smiled and introduced. Snowy Mountain, where have I heard this name? Wait a second, could it be this is that nest of Northern Plains demonic path Gu immortals, Snowy Mountain Blessed Land? Tai Bai Yunxing cried out in shock. Where else did you think it was? Hei Lu Lan sneered. Fang Yuan provided an introduction for Tai Bai Yunxing. There are differences between immortal and mortal. Old Bai, you just recently advanced and you only have heard me mention some information about the Northern Plains Gu immortal world in passing. This Fairy Li Shan is the owner of the third branch peak of Snowy Mountain Blessed Land, you can also call her the third leader. Third, leader. Tai Bai Yunxing stared at Fairy Li Shan with wide open eyes. He had never expected for this gentle and refined woman to be a demonic path Gu immortal, moreover she was the third leader of the largest demonic path nest of Northern Plains. Cough cough cough. Dong Fang Chang Fan was lying on a sickbed, coughing incessantly. With every cough, his pale white face would wither a bit more. Lord! A handsome young man was standing beside the sickbed with a mournful and grieving expression. He was wearing a white robe, his face was white like jade and his eyes were deep, revealing a calm, mature temperament. It was Dong Fang Yu Liang. No need to grieve, Liang heir, cough cough, to be born, get old, be sick and die is the way of nature. Dong Fang Chang Fan gasped for breath after saying this, and continued after recovering some strength, your talents are better than mine, among the whole tribe I feel most optimistic about you. The responsibility of Dongfang tribe's growth can only be shouldered by you. I, Dongfang Changfan, would not misjudge this. Lord Supreme Elder. Dongfang Yuliang's eyes reddened, sobbing silently. The old man nearing death in front of his eyes was his benefactor. Dongfang Yuliang lost his parents at the age of 11, after that he had to maintain his livelihood and also care for his 6-year-old sister, Dongfang Qinyu. To preserve their lives, he gave away all the inheritances left by his parents. But it was exactly because of this, that he was noticed by Dongfang Changfan, not only becoming a trusted aide, his sister was also given great care. Later, Dongfang Yuliang even received Dongfang Changfan's personal guidance. And despite the obstructions and oppositions from many sides, Dongfang Changfan appointed Dongfang Yuliang as the tribe leader. After Dongfang Yuliang lost in the imperial court contest and returned to the tribe, he was suppressed and pushed aside by various factions. It was Dongfang Changfan who protected and shielded him again, paying a considerable price. Dongfang Changfan was becoming weaker and weaker. He opened his mouth several times but no words came out. Finally, he spoke in an extremely weak voice, "Your hand." Dongfang Yuliang extended his hand and grabbed the old man's right hand. The old man was holding a gu on his hand. This gu, take it." Dongfang Changfan's face turned red from the strain, extracting the last bit of energy from his dying breath. All. West ch. Point. rs on n.o/v. l. I/n/c. m. He closely stared at Dongfang Yuliang and reminded him, although Dongfang tribe has signed an alliance agreement with the other righteous path tribes, the affairs of world are changeable and hard to predict. My death will cause Dongfang tribe to fall down from its prosperous period. You are my successor, you must be careful. This gu, once you activate it, it will bring you to a secluded place which contains the cultivation resources I prepared for you, insights about immortal ascension, the tribe's secret history as well as all my comprehensions of wisdom path cultivation. Remember, always prioritize your safety, don't be impatient. The tribe has demonic path spies. Dongfang Changfan's expression froze, the flush on his face turned fainter and the final trace of radiance in his eyes faded. Lord! Dongfang Yuliang's face was already covered with tears, and this moment, he could no longer hold them back, crying in sorrow. Northern Plains No. 1 Wisdom Path Gu Immortal, Dongfang Changfan, had passed away. The news spread, Dongfang tribe cried for 3 days and 3 nights. And when the great forces of Northern Plains received the information, both demonic and righteous path Gu Immortals let out breaths of relief. Dongfang Changfan was a legendary character. At the time of his birth, Dongfang tribe was already declining rapidly, with only the name of a super force but with no power. Dongfang Changfan became a Gu immortal and led the tribe, scheming in all directions, using wisdom path methods to devise strategies, tying bonds to powerful friends, killing the weak, and even plotting for his enemies to fight each other, causing Dongfang tribe to rapidly rise again. Dongfang tribe's growth was almost entirely because of Dongfang Changfan. But because of this, all the Gu immortals of Northern Plains became aware of Dongfang Changfan's might. Wisdom path Gu immortals often did not need to use their own hands to humiliate their enemies. Making schemes that connected like a spider web, one thing would lead to the other, enemies would feel like they were sinking into a swamp but unable to extricate themselves. Gu immortals feared Dongfang Changfan and secretly reached an agreement. Banning the sale of lifespan Gu to Dongfang Changfan and even secretly destroying Dongfang tribe's plans of searching for lifespan Gu. Dongfang Changfan schemed against others, and finally was also schemed by others. The sun was high in the sky, Crescent Lake gleamed in the sunlight with the occasional dragonfish leaping out of the lake. Leftover snow piled up beside the lake, this was the remnant of the once in 10 years blizzard disaster. Feng Yuan destroyed Giant Sun Immortal Venerable's arrangement. The blizzard disaster poured into Imperial Court Blessed Land, thus the destruction caused by the disaster in Northern Plains was many times lighter than the past. Imperial Court Blessed Land existed no longer while Tru Yang Building was also destroyed. There would be no more of the once in 10 years blizzard disaster in Northern Plains. The remaining snow slowly melted under the sunlight. Grass was already poking out of the snow. There was a mixture of green and white grasses mixed together. Feng Yuan and Tai Bai Yunxing moved together, seeing many water wolves and solitary tri-horned rhinos in their path. Water chestnut trees used to fill this place, but now it was a scene of barrenness, the trees already freezing to death or breaking down from the accumulated snow. The intense change in the scenery brought Feng Yuan some trouble. He was searching for the passage to Langya Blessed Land, that purple stone tree left behind by thieving Heaven Demon Venerable. 3 days had passed since the alliance with He Lulan. Little Hu Immortal was at Hu Immortal Blessed Land, paying attention to Treasure Yellow Heaven all the time but still not seeing Langya Old Immortal's divine sense. Feng Yuan took back Fixed Immortal Travel and used this Immortal Gu to go to Crescent Lake. Feng Yuan did not directly teleport to Langya Blessed Land to prevent any unnecessary misunderstandings. He planned to use Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable's arrangement again and enter properly. Because the surroundings had changed, he was unable to directly teleport to the purple stone tree. Being able to directly appear beside Crescent Lake was thanks to Tai Bai Yunxing. When he was wandering over Northern Plains, he had once dug a cave beside Crescent Lake and made simple arrangements, staying for 2 to 3 months. The cave had not collapsed. Feng Yuan first lent Fixed Immortal Travel to Tai Bai Yunxing, then entered his immortal aperture, arriving at this place.